It's February 1st. For the record, Commissioner Bill Beach is sick today, so he's not attending. We have a full calendar, so we'll just jump right in. First order of business is calendar correspondence.
Most of the meetings this week are Commissioner Peaches. There is here's a correspondence item on this as well. On Friday, the LWA creation site is being considered as a placement on the National Register of Historic Places, and they're inviting you to attend Governor's Advisory Council to observe or participate in that process. And that's Friday at 9 a.m. in Olympia.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's in Olympia, it's not out here on the site.
Well, it is in Olympia at the Pritchard Building. It says formerly State Library, Northwest Room, basically. Following week on the 11th, we have Commissioner Ozias, you've got the Peninsula Regional Sport Network and the Construction Board meetings. And the James comes from Tribal Council Chambers. I don't know if you want me to go to the next week or not.
It's pretty routine that week as well.
I think so.
Correspondence.
We have the piece that I already mentioned about the recreation site. And then Judge Doherty emailed each of you, Administrator Jones as well, about he would like that email included in the discussion regarding a part-time commissioner in District 4 So I printed that out. Okay, and I think what Juana said was that he'd like you to read it to that item.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Okay, anything else? Calendar. Agreement with the Washington Welfare Trust. Good morning. Morning, Rich.
This is this document that you have here. It's a foundation document that runs right along with the contract, the 2014-2017 contract, which provides for medical and dental benefits for the non-union contract members. We're able to piggyback on the Teamsters medical plan for our non-union members, and so this just establishes that foundation document. It actually goes back to the start of the contract 2014 and will run through the end of 2017, when the contract will be up by that time. It just requires an approval.
And since as you know, the non-bargaining unit employees can't vote on something like this because they're not a bargaining unit, all the other units that use Teamster Welfare Trust get to vote. And they submit that to Teamsters back in Chicago or Detroit or wherever they're at. And so the non-bargaining unit, we do this every time, the commissioners speak for them. So you have to approve and sign. This would be a red file.
Any questions?
No, it's pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Thanks. Request for a part-time court commissioner in District Court 1.
Come on up.
Some additional funds for that extra help.
Did you see what Judge Doherty had to say?
Okay.
So He just says, gentlemen, today's PDN notes your Monday work session includes a discussion of part-time court commissioner in District Court 1. I would like to be part of that discussion. As you all recognize, the Clallam County District Court is one court with essentially two districts or venues. For too long, in my view, the cooperation between the two districts has suffered and morphed from one of maximum cooperation during mine and Justice Owen's respective terms and the present. The instant suggestion brings the county to a crossroads, which begs, in my view, a reassessment of the roles of the two districts. I would never suggest eliminating the two-district concept, but I do believe the county can find new efficiencies between the courts at cost savings. This is particularly applicable if the board is considering hiring a part-time court commissioner, the cost of which may exceed that of simply establishing the county as a two-judge county and simply dividing up the total work of the court. I think the time has come to engage all the court participants in such a discussion, and I would urge you not to take action on this item until a more encompassing assessment can be had. Normally, I would appear before the board personally to voice my concerns, but we have a full calendar involving county, state, and city of Forks cases on Monday, and it is impossible to appear. If I've breached some formality by this note, I apologize. Best regards, John.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything it says in the letter. The problem is we cannot do that. We can't do any redistricting during the current term. We would have to do that, which would be 2.5 years from now. When the seats are up. That's when you could make that change. I don't have an issue with what he's saying. I don't have any disagreement necessarily with combining the two, but the hard reality is we can't do that for 2.5 years. Now, if you want to go down that road, I have no issue with that at all. My concern is what are we going to do between now and then? The reason I bring this up, and the reason why I think we need to have the additional funds, is not to create a new position, to be a permanent position for the county. That's not it at all. That was never the intention, and that's why it's kind of a misnomer when it says hiring a commissioner. We're not looking to do that. We have pro tems, we actually have a commissioner now. They're not permanent, they work when the work is needed. The reason why I think we need to do this, in fact, we as you can see right now with the workload that we currently have under District 1, we're doing, as the only judge there, I do the job of 1.6 judges. This is a breakdown of every district court in the state. And you can see there's nobody anywhere near close to the amount of workload that we're doing in District Court 1. In fact, the closest one is Franklin County, who does 1.38. We're doing 1.63 right now. If you go back and look at it historically, when I took office, it was about 1.2. Then it jumped up from 1.2 to 1.3. Stayed at 1.3 for some time, and most recently it went up to 1.4. The year before last, it was 1.5, and now last year it was 1.6. At a certain point, we get to a breaking point, and we simply can't continue to do the work that needs to be done when I'm the only judge there and I'm doing 1.6 judges work.
Can't clone yourself yet?
What's that?
Can't clone yourself yet?
No, not yet. And one of the problems that we're having, one of the issues we have is right now we have calendars every morning and every afternoon, Monday through Friday, which means I have no dedicated office time. Now, I have to have, as the presiding judge, I'm supposed to have time to be in the office and do administrative work, in addition to doing all the regular research, writing opinions and so forth. I need to have some dedicated office time. The other problem is the amount of cases that we're dealing with in a particular calendar. Oftentimes, we don't have enough time, even though we'll start a calendar at 9 o'clock, we're not getting them done by noon, which creates all kinds of problems for the jail because they have to take their folks back down and have them for lunch. So what we're asking for is not a new hire. We're simply asking for the ability to hire, use the pro tems that we have right now more than we can do right now, because we just don't have the funds for it. What that will also do is it will allow us to dedicate additional resources to the probation. If you recall, a couple of years ago, we used to have Commissioner Miller, and now Judge Miller was a commissioner, and he oversaw the probation program. And it was good because we had the ability to dedicate more judicial time to that. And those are really your people that are presenting the biggest danger in the community, because it's your DUIs and it's your DD assaults. And if we had this additional resources, we could dedicate more time to that. And that's really where it's needed.
So in the 2016 budget, we have $42,620 for extra help. And so what you're really suggesting is just, is a debatable emergency to add 20,000 to that, is what you're really asking for, not new people, like you said.
Correct. That's all we're really wanting. And that way we can have, my Monday afternoon calendar can be covered by a pro tem or one of the commissioners. That gives me Monday afternoon to do the stuff I have to do, which is historically what I always had. But about 2 years ago, because the volumes, as it was increasing, we could no longer contain the workload within the calendars, and so it bled over into what was traditionally my office time. So what I wanted to do was I want to reestablish that.
And certainly the caseload trend has been upwards over the course of time. Has there been any kind of an unusual spike or anything that has resulted in asking for this now as opposed to during part of the budgeting process last year?
Well, we were hoping that with the new consolidation, I wanted to see how that was going to play out first, having gone through it. The consolidation is good, it increases efficiency in a lot of other ways, but it doesn't really affect our workload very much, because it's the same number of cases for us. It's just we prosecuting the building. It really doesn't change our workload much. We were able to shift a few things around, and I was hoping that would have a bigger impact in the cast. Unfortunately, it has. It's not enough to compensate for the additional work that we're seeing. The other nice thing about this approach, rather than hiring somebody where you have X number of hours per week, then you're kind of stuck with a permanent employee. That's the reason we're not actually that is because by simply having the money in the budget, what we can do is if the case filings drop off, we can adjust to it, and we don't need to use it. If it increases, then if it stays where it's at least we have the resources and we can start to implement using the commission's protest more than we can now.
What would you need from the board?
At some point, we would need to do a debatable emergency on the additional $10,000. I mean, technically, we wouldn't need to do it until probably September or October, when the 42,260 that's already in there would be used up. But before we exceed that amount, there would need to be a formal debatable emergency done. At the same time, it's possible, because we were pretty conservative in estimating the new revenues that were going to come in when we're collecting all of the fines and sending them to the other cities. It's also possible that by then we would know that it might be a supplemental appropriation. There might be more money coming in than what we budgeted. 20,000 isn't that much. So that could be done as well. So what I would say now is there's no real hurry to doing a debatable emergency. If the commissioners believed that, yes, the need was there, go forth and increase your staffing at this point, and we'll deal with whatever the appropriate budget document is at the time that becomes necessary, say by mid-year, when we'll have more information. That would work real well as well.
If I could dovetail on that, one of the requirements under RCW is how pro tem monies are spent, and there's certain categories that it has to be in: sick leave, vacation time, etc. There's like 6 or 7 different categories. One of them is excess caseload, which is clearly what we're doing here. The one caveat with excess caseload is excess caseload has to be identified by the legislative authority, which is you guys. So that's really why we're here. We simply Jim's absolutely right. We really don't need the money now, because there's enough money where it lasts us most of the year as it is. But what we need to do is for you guys to say, yes, there is excess caseload, obviously 1.6. It's hard not to come to that conclusion. And so that we can start utilizing that funds. Because it's how we track it, is we track every penny that is spent on pro tems, and it has to go into a certain category, and that's the one that we're not using much of. Because we don't, frankly, we don't have much in there.
And I just did the math real quick. If you look at the 2015 filings judicial needs estimate, statewide, there's 121 district court judges, total judicial officers, 121.35, but the only need is 104.94 is the estimated need, which means that the average judge is doing 0.865 of a full court load, whereas District Court 1, according to this, is doing 1.6, and District Court 2 is doing 0.6, and we have him hired for 0.6. So that's actually quite an increase. Many years, District 2 was in the 0.3, 0.4, 0.2 range, and so this last year it's picked up. So really, to expect Judge Doherty to chip in time now that his own workload is picked up doesn't make a lot of sense either at the moment.
And he also doesn't live in this district.
Well, yeah.
That's another issue. And we need to live in the district.
So I think there certainly is excess caseload.
Now, one of
I'm
the-
just hoping more money will come in to help us pay for it.
Yeah, and I think, and we've been looking at that, there's several things that the fee structures that we use, which we have not changed or increased in quite some time. One of them is probation. As an additional revenue source, particularly if we can dedicate more time and resources to it, and judicial time to it, it would make sense that will cover a good deal, if not more than what we need.
Well, the excess caseload seems pretty clearly documented, and it makes sense to me to reassess partway through the year and see where we're at. But I'm certainly open to the concept.
Thank you. I guess what all of you really need then is something from you guys saying, yes, there's excess caseload.
So
That's all we really need.
Then I have one request. If we were to sign something like that, I wonder if at the same time, if the board could then make a request back to the two courts to, obviously the judges aren't going to do it, but maybe have their staffs kind of work up a report back to the Board of Commissioners on outlining the process for what Judge Doherty, I support what Judge Doherty says. I think it's time to look at this on a long-term solution. And so this idea of combining the two districts into one district court, like he suggests, could you get something back? Could the board ask the courts to look in that, work together, and get a report back to the board so that we know? Because I assume the commissioners would have some role in that, or maybe not.
Well, actually, what has to happen is there has to be an entire redistricting committee set up.
That you appoint.
And that you would appoint. And so it's a very complicated process, and it would probably take all of the 2.5 years that we have between now and the time of the terms expire. It's not an easy thing. It's not something you should
Why shouldn't we?
So-
My point is, I don't think as the Board of Commissioners, I don't remember us ever actually directing to see what that process is and take a strong look at it. Maybe this is the perfect time to support, that's basically what Judge Doherty's asking for. I think it's a reasonable request.
I don't have an issue with it at all. One of the hurdles we're going to have is there's a memorandum of understanding between you guys from the county and Forks that goes back till, before Susan Owens was there, where there's certain requirements under that memorandum of agreement where all the case files for District Court 2 have to reside out there. The administration has to reside out there. So there's some complexities. Yeah, I mean, that can be amended, but that's another layer of complexity. It's not just dealing with the RCWs about how you combine districts. It's also going to be that political football of having their own court out there.
Well, would you guys be willing to come back if we could schedule a time when Judge Doherty could join us on a follow-up work session to kind of lay out how we would formally go look at this process? It seems like that's kind of what he was asking.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I'd be happy to do that. I guess what we need to figure out is what are the advantages
Right,
in doing that?
right.
And whether or not there's going to be a shift in the relationship that memorandum of agreement or memorandum of understanding, I'm not sure which it is, between you and Forbes. If that's going to need to be amended or not, or if we can work within that framework. There's a lot of moving parts to that, but absolutely, I'd be happy to do that.
Maybe you could flesh out with Judge Doherty, basically that today was nothing more than maybe a potential budget emergency down the road, no new staff, so he's clear on that. And then ask him maybe what his thoughts are, would he be willing to put together a work session with the board to discuss the pros and cons of what he sees and moving forward. Based on today's discussion, obviously Judge Porter is willing to participate, Keith will be willing to participate with the judges, so see what his thoughts are for the next steps, but explain that no new staff's being hired,
Right.
and it's not even a budget emergency at this point, it's just
Right.
potential, the judge is just alerting us, just get his thoughts on what he would like to see. He talks about the time has come to engage all court participants in such a discussion regarding the district courts becoming one court, I think, is what he's talking about. And I would urge you not to take action until a more encompassing assessment can be had. So if we're not going to take action, we don't need to yet. Let's get his thoughts, get it, and see if we can pull this together. Short-term budget emergency, that happens all the time. Long-term, is there a better process? I don't know. But it seems like he's willing to engage in that conversation, and if you are too, then this would be a good time to start that conversation.
Yeah, the one drawback, well, it's not necessarily a drawback, but one of the things is if it becomes one district, where it's one judicial district, then both judges would have to run countywide, which is fine. I mean, for District Court 1, for mine, I cover the vast majority of the county as it is. But it would be much more cumbersome for that person who ends up is working in Forbes to have to run countywide when in fact they're really working for us. It's perfectly fine with me.
And I'm not sure that's what he's saying and thinking. And I'm not totally confident that I do know what he's saying, I'm just looking at his words. So I think a further discussion with the judge, with you guys, with him, Clallam. So, and if we have to do it on a Thursday or whatever your guys, if we have to do it around the judge's schedules, I think it'd be important enough so we could put that on future agenda items.
Okay.
Give it John, Keith, figure out the best time to schedule that, maybe April. Give you guys some time to put some stuff together.
And I guess the way that I would think about that is trying to take a step back from the way that the things have built up over the course of time. Look ahead and say, is the organization as we have it now the right organization for what we expect moving forward, or does it make sense to look at things differently? And that's the kind of information that would be helpful for me to know moving forward.
Because there's a lot of ways, a lot of different permutations that you can get there. If you look around the state where there's multiple jurisdictions within one county, and there's a lot of different ways that you can set it up. And, the way the RCWs are written very much leaves it wide open. So I think what we need to do is identify what are our objectives I guess that was my point was, what are our objectives? What are we trying to accomplish by doing it? And then from then, once we know what the objectives are, then figure out what the best way to get there will be.
Excellent.
And I think that's my biggest question is, what are our objectives? What do we want to do? What is it that we're trying to accomplish by doing that? The merger. Like I say, I don't have an issue with the will right now. So in order for us to get legislative authorization for excess caseload, we're going to need to have
Something in writing, huh?
So when we go over resolution,
we
know that
it's going to be.
Right.
I think a resolution
Okay.
probably work.
Yeah.
We can't use any excess caseload without that authorization.
Right.
We don't necessarily need the money because we can shuffle it around for now, but we need the authorization.
All right.
Then you're going to get a resolution.
I will. I'll let
Flesh
you
out a
know.
little more what he's thinking and what time frame, and it seems like a good time to start that conversation now, like he suggests.
Right. Okay.
Okay. I think then you can work with Keith on the right language for the resolution.
And work with Trish. We'll probably have one already. We haven't, because when we used to have Chris Melly as your commissioner, was that for extra caseload?
he was a permanent hire.
Okay, so it's a different,
At 50%, because at that time, he was a half-time hearing examiner, a half-time commissioner.
Right.
He was a hire, it wasn't.
So you could refer.
So I don't know if we would have done that.
okay, well, we'll get it. We probably won't add it to tomorrow, but on the following week, we'll get it done.
Kind of talk
So we'll get it next week.
Okay, great. Thank you.
It's much like the commissioner, what you just went through with the, no, going over the, not the budget, but the county's
The charter.
charter. Yes, it's very much like the charter.
Thank you.
You'll get back to
I will.
Judge.
I will do that.
And kind of follow up and his thoughts on timeframe, and then we can coordinate with your court, his court for follow-up work session.
Tentatively put down sometime in April, different days, okay. So I'll,
And we'll hopefully have that resolution on the agenda next week then.
yeah, that's what we got.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Anything else to add? No. Request for waiver of bid to update county certified drinking water laboratory utilizing the existing manufacturer.
Just a word about a lab. We have a certified lab. We run drinking water samples from public water supplies and also individual wells through the lab. And it's been trending for the last few years that we're running more and more samples. Plus a number of the grants that partners have, whether we do water quality work, whether it's sort of trying or keepers or whatever. We also run all of those types of samples from the lab. So on a community level, it's a really good service. So our issue is that we have, I guess you could consider it an antiquated water treatment system in there, and certain procedures that we run through that have to have this really high quality filtered water. And so Sue's been doing a good job just nursing it along, and the problem is it's over 20 years old and the manufacturer don't have the kinds of replacement parts for this system anymore. And so we've been doing some investigation, and really the manufacturer who installed the original system can help us out. We would need to buy certain new parts for it. And we don't know if other labs would be able to, in the time frame that we're hoping to get, and using the existing system, we were hoping that we could just go right to this lab and say, yeah, do the work we really need. Part of the other problem is that most manufacturers don't deal with small systems like we have, and so there's very few out there. And I don't know if there's anything local. Nowhere seems to be at least here and available, so when we need them, they're here to do the maintenance and the repair if we really need it. So that they meet all of our expectations. The other part of it is that the reason why we're here now is because we have to talk to you today in order to get to the budget emergency public hearing that would have to happen. So our timing is, we're not critical, but looking ahead, we're trying to get this repaired as soon as we can. If we end up delaying more, we're going to have to go another month down the road before we can have the system fixed. So that's a consideration for us. That's really not a consideration for the sole source, but that's just another issue for us. So we costed it out. We figure between $7,500 and $8,000 would be plenty to have the system fixed, and anything that we don't spend goes back to general fund anyway.
So you haven't done a request here for a budget emergency. Have you worked that through with Debbie already, or you're still?
We haven't. We're going to have to do that for, I think it's February. Okay.
Ordinarily, this is a small enough amount that the sole source waiver could be signed by the county official, but in order to be able to do that, the money's got to be in the budget. And since the money isn't in the budget, you would have to approve that and approve the sole source bid waiver.
Help me understand, is the equipment that you're using, is it old enough that as time goes by, maintenance problems are going to be harder and harder to deal with because the supplier doesn't exist anymore, or I mean, how much more useful life do you expect to have out of the equipment that's in it?
Maybe a year. There are, one whole part of it is not made anymore, and it broke, and it can't be replaced. It's just, they don't have replacement parts for it.
So how does this request relate to your long-term needs, your long-term equipment?
Well, we see that the trend is for the lab to be running more samples.
Right.
So at least on this last replacement or update 20 years ago, it lasted 20 years. And that was metal part holders that put it in. And they're a well-known scientific equipment manufacturer. So as far as our need, we think it will take us the next 20 years. You would figure. The one thing that we're mindful of is the last time we had an emergency shutdown, it means that we have to try and help our customers find other labs.
Right.
And what happened was we ended up losing a customer who gave us a lot of business and never really got that back. So we don't want that to happen either. So we're trying to think ahead and say, well, let's do it now and do it as soon as we can.
So if I understand you correctly, it sounds like what you're saying is that an investment of a few $1,000s now in fixing the testing equipment that we have is likely to ensure that the equipment is going to be functional for a number of years in the future, even though the manufacturer doesn't exist anymore, or is...
The manufacturer is still there, they just don't make the replacement parts for the system I have.
Gotcha.
The one I had was installed in 1998,
Gotcha.
and those components have progressed to new components, and
Right.
the replacement parts, when small parts break, like even just a little O-ring, don't replace that little O-ring anymore.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is, I mean, I think being able to test water is an important function, and I want us to be able to do that. I don't want to get into a situation where we're sinking too much into a system that is, is just going to get more and more expensive to maintain or impossible to maintain over the course of time. And it doesn't sound like that's quite where we're at.
It shouldn't be that.
Okay.
And actually, I think having a lab is a good investment for the county because it does pay for itself. It just seems like with more demand to it, you're getting more, and getting more funds.
So when an O-ring goes, how do you find a replacement for it if the manufacturer doesn't make it anymore?
They don't.
Well, that's what we're trying to avoid.
So, right. And so then I'd be out of the water, I wouldn't be able to make the purified water anymore. So
Yeah, so that's why, I mean, Sue was saying that she thinks another year, but there's no bet on it.
Right.
We don't know, so we're just trying to say that now is a good time to go through it.
But theoretically, this investment would buy a number of years, despite the fact that there are other pieces that if they fail, we can't replace them. I'm having a hard time understanding. I'm sorry.
So this is what it looks like now. There's a storage tank and some treatment units. This is the one that I'm having trouble finding parts for. They're just going to replace that box. The storage, this one goes away. The storage unit and all that would be there. The pre-filters would be updated so that I could get the O-rings.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's just
Gotcha.
replacing the parts that are marginally functioning now, that replacement parts are hard for.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
Kind of just
Thank you.
upgrading certain sections of
That's
it.
why.
Gotcha, yeah, that makes sense, thank you. Now I get it.
So what would the next steps be?
I would think we ought to take this into two parts, that we would add to a consent agenda, hearing no objection, allowing the chair to sign the request for waiver of quote, and that would be step one, and either add it tomorrow or the following week if we want to wait another week, and then you turn into Debbie the paperwork necessary to do the budget emergency to pay for it.
So let's see if we can get one of those on the agenda for next week.
Okay?
That's fine with me, yeah.
So I guess then we want these back. See how's the sole source bid?
Yes. Yes.
Will that work for you guys?
That works great. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. Update on Women, Infants, and Children program and a request for direction on filling the new positions authorized in the budget. So Pam's here, Iowa.
Thank you very much.
Just some basic information about the program, and I believe it's
Let Pam Walker go first. She is our program coordinator for WIC and registered dietitian. So, give those good figures.
the WIC program's figures for 2015 don't come in over a month at least. So what I did was I modified the 2014 to make it a little more readable than the big annual report. So basically, WIC is not an entitlement program. It's a nutrition education program funded by the Food and Nutrition Services and goes through the United States Department of Agriculture and then comes down to the states, which in our state, the Department of Health is the entity that then hands out money to the different local health jurisdictions or private nonprofits that administer the program. So WIC has been around since 1974, and I've been with WIC for almost 30 years, and it's a great program. The statistics that you have here are based on federal fiscal year 2015. Our numbers are a little bit different this year. You can see that most of our families on the WIC are working families, and most of them are living in poverty. We have a caseload of 1,240. We have 7 people and about 4 FTEs of employee time dedicated to WIC in our county. We see our number of unique clients for 2015, not the fiscal year, but just the actual year. We're about 2,800 clients. We have 4 visits per year with these clients, certifications, follow-ups, we do measurements, we do intake, we provide nutrition ed. We saw about 11,000 people last year, individual appointments for folks. And that means we did about 5,500 nutrition ed contacts last year. We do nutrition, actually we do community referrals for folks in the community on all kinds of things. Our WIC intake is fairly extensive, things that are pertinent to lower income families. And so we do lots of referrals to First Step, to the hospital, to doctor's offices, dentists, DSHs, of course. Let's see. We have a huge focus on breastfeeding promotion because it saves money in the long run to breastfeed your baby. If you look at the 5-year report, actually the amount of money that we brought into the county for WIC actually dropped a few years ago because we had a huge push on breastfeeding, made it a little tougher for folks just to come in and get formula because they wanted it. We had to do a whole nutrition and counseling and breastfeeding education session with folks to encourage breastfeeding and see where see where things went going well, and then connect folks with a population educator. The amount of, let's see, this is just loading up all kinds of facts for us. We work also on reducing childhood obesity. You can see in Clallam County, our childhood obesity rate is a little higher than the state rate. And in Health and Human Services, we can actually look at lower. Rick does a lot of fruit and vegetable education, hunger cue management, nutrition density. That's on the next page down here. So about breastfeeding, about reducing obesity in kids. Then we have the statewide facts for how much money that we bring into grocery stores. These are the state facts. And then I might have to modify this. Then the facts for dollars in the grocery stores here in Clallam County. For example, the federal fiscal year 2014, we brought in about 82% of that total figure to the grocery stores. What the state does is it breaks out this one check for fruits and vegetables to show how much of that total grocery store amount is being dedicated to fruits and vegetables, because that is also a national push for fruits and veggies and what matters, very important. And we also have dollars to local farmers through the WIC and Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program. We actually at our local health department moved to about 95% of Clallam County's fruit and vegetable farmers market checks this year. We do a lot of promotion. And even in that, we're still trying to boost it up. We give this away, educate folks to go to their farmers markets, go to their local growers that are approved farm stores and use that. We did about 8,600 referrals for federal fiscal year. 2014, we did, I think, over 11,000 last year. Our caseload is, I think it could be greater if, I think I need to spend a little bit of time on outreach, which is tough because right now I'm seeing clients, so we make caseloads so we get paid by the state. And also if we have more certified time, so that I can take it away with the money part. If you have any questions, I'd love to meet with you and really go over this. I have lots of tables and figures and articles, and it's kind of a nice overview.
Any questions for Pam?
Right now.
In the 2016 budget, WIC is scheduled to increase 2.2 staff to move the program toward the USDA approved staffing levels. This includes 1 FTE for a WIC clerk, 1 FTE for a WIC certifier, and 0.2 FTE for dietitian and nutritionist. The county administrator directed that all staffing increases need to be taken to the BOCC for decision. So we're requesting permission to fill those positions that are in the 2016 budget. The new staffing will help stabilize the caseload, as we'll be able to consistently meet the required standards. When we fall behind, if it's more than 2 or 3 months, they take caseload away from you. So that's the request.
How does someone know that they qualify? How does a new mother know that they qualify for the WIC program?
They give us a call, and all the docs and prenatal clinics know. The BSHS refers folks to us. What they do is they give us a call, and we go into our little WIC computer and go into a little wizard that then we pull up income data, family size. We hand these out at the counter, and these are available as outreach materials, so it tells how much you can make. You can make quite a bit and be on the program. Food stamps is down here at like 0% poverty. We're at 185% federal poverty level. Alcohol for kids, the Medicaid program is 200%, so we take kids that are on alcohol as well. So people call in and say, am I eligible? And we're able to say yes. We put these inside people's WIC folders with their checks to hand out to their family and friends. We have a lot of students. We have a lot of people who are starting their own businesses. We have grandparents. We have great-grandparents. We have all kinds of folks participating in WIC. The emphasis is on being very user-friendly. We are very kind-hearted folks. Whenever we have questions, we can call the state, and they almost always decide in favor of the family. And so it's a really great program.
And it sounds like the state or the federal government mandates a certain staffing threshold. And so if this weren't approved, then the excess caseload that would be taken away, what would that mean? Would that mean that those people would not have access to WIC services at all, or they'd have to go somewhere else, or?
We would serve them, we would just be really stretched, and we've been really stretched, frankly, for years and years. The state had a lot of extra money about 5 or so years ago, and a local program coordinator said, you guys should take some extra caseload. Looking at our Medicaid, Apple Health, you have enough people, you could get those kids in here. They actually bumped our caseload up quite a bit, and so I had to say, okay, they're giving us more caseload money, but we're probably not going to be able to make it. We tried our best. I think we made it 2 months out of those years, and then we couldn't. The money dried up. The state said, okay, we need to take it back now. They did that to a lot of clinics. So it wasn't for want of trying. It was just for want of staffing and space to see folks. They tell us we have a lot of kids that are WIC eligible on Apple Health that are not coming in. We do our outreach. We talk to families. Some folks, it's just tough for them to come in. More moms are going back to work, more dads are watching the kids, and the dads are kind of reluctant to come in and ask for help. So we're pretty friendly that way. We're seeing, gosh, last year we saw a lot more dads coming in. So,
And we do have outreaches, if you will. We go and have staffing in Forks, and of course, once a week in school.
right, we have extra clinics. One thing that I'm seeing by this is that at our little health department, we have a lot of part-time people. So we have one full-time certifier, and then I'm a 0.8. And then we have other people who work full-time, and they don't work full-time in WIC. Then in Forks, of course, I think they're just 0.4. And so if we have extra people coming in for WIC, sometimes it's hard to, or impossible to pull extra help away from, say, the immunization clinic for my clerk certifier, who I can actually be seeing clients in a different room. So we could run more people if we had more staff. And that would really help. Right now, we're making caseload for the most part. That's after they dropped it back. But then they increased it up again because we were doing so well. And so what I'd like to do is get the caseload up to where it's more representative of the kids that are potentially eligible to the Apple recommendations. And to do that, I mean, we could do that. We have the space to do that. We just don't have the staff to do that.
And this is supported by, it is not fully supported by the federal government in terms of our cost. And as you may remember, Commissioner Chapman, I don't know, what was it, 3 years ago or 4 years ago, we took a really hard look at seeing if there was some other local agency whose personnel costs weren't as high per person as ours could take over WIC in order to keep it coming into the community, but be a little bit more, a higher percentage of grant funding. And there was nobody big enough, there was nobody willing, or at least at that time, to put together, they could do it countywide, and we weren't able to figure out a way to make a coalition do it. Some of the bigger counties have done that. They've been able to transfer into some private nonprofit paying minimum wage or barely above compared to what we pay salary and benefits. So this is what, we get about 60% reimbursement. Is that still the number? Or I know it's a floating number based on how stressed you are.
The number of cases, right.
But somewhere around there is my recollection.
Probably 55.
55%. So it's 45% general fund supported. That was one of the emails you got some time ago, the last couple of weeks, saying, you know, why are we transferring this much money into Health and Human Services? We don't need to do that. Well, it's because we budgeted this last year a significant increase for WIC, not as much as they were asking, but a significant
We
increase.
asked for 3.8.
Yeah, so you got
2.2.
Yeah. So, but my point is, it was determined to be a compromise. Let's get a little bit extra, let's do a little bit more, but it is coming from general fund support.
So this is in my opinion, one of the most important social services that we provide in the county. And the reason you're here today is because up until last week, I don't think we would have had the revenue to support this increase. But with the restoration of the 0.02% sales tax, which some people say the county didn't need, we actually can put it into programs like this. We can increase your service. And if you look at the numbers of the percentages of families in Clallam County that need this MD, gosh, the important foundation that these families can provide for their children, which then heads off a whole host of problems later on down the road. These are dollars spent up front at the most critical time. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but
I was about to say, Commissioner Chapman, you've
I'm
been listening and
trying
you're
to make a point for those. I'm trying to make a point for those who opposed bringing back the 0.02%. That this is an investment in our future. This is an investment in our children and allow them to get off to a healthy start. And in fact, you look at the long-term ramifications of some of the health problems that we're seeing when families aren't able to provide proper nutrition. Secondly, as you and I talked about, this is a huge benefit for our local economy because these dollars, they have to just be staying right here in Clallam County. These people are not traveling to Silverdale to spend these dollars. They're not traveling off the peninsula. So these are local dollars. They're matched with state dollars that directly impact our local economy. And this is an investment in our future. But it wouldn't have been possible if we hadn't restored the 0.02%. This would have been one of those programs that you would have had to eventually, starting next year, begin to make drastic service cuts to because we wouldn't have had the money as we look into the future. So I put that on the record. There will still be those who oppose that tax increase. This is exactly the investment in our future with that small amount of money. We make it as one of this program itself is one of the primary reasons why I decided what we did last year was so long. Because looking in the future, you were going to have to cut a program like this, which is cutting the investment in our community's future, which will then pour and add problems onto our system as these kids grow up without proper nutrition and parents don't have the proper help. So, and then finally, you'd be cutting off support to the local economy. So these dollars stay in our local economy. We know that those dollars, as the longer they stay here, the more they lead to help, the more they exponentially multiply, those jobs are created. The staggering thing is that we have so many folks in this community that need access to these dollars, and we have so many kids. So I appreciate you bringing it forward. I think that as we move forward, we'll want to continue to have regular updates. And if we need to get to that 0.3 or that 3 position number next year's budget, we now, I believe, have the revenue to support this program, and no longer will have to look at making those cuts. I mean, that's the positive news out of a very modest restoration of the sales tax. And so this program alone was one of the primary factors for me to change my mind. And it's too important. It's too important to invest in our children at a time when they're the most needy, the most vulnerable, and they need the best opportunity to get started. The statistics are too clear on what happens with a community who doesn't do that. And so as long as I'm here, Clallam County is going to be first and foremost in investing in the Women, Infants, and Children program. It's near and dear to my heart because of personal experiences and personal reasons, but it's also near and dear to my heart because it's one of the very best ways I believe we can put money directly into our community to benefit our community at large. So I appreciate you bringing. That's why you're here, though, is because we kind of had to put on hold, making sure we would have revenue. We do. We have the ability to increase this program, and we want this program increased as much as people need because it's such an investment. It's one that it is. And we're going to know all this, and I don't want to steal anything you might want to say, but I did want to put on the record that we can now increase this program because we have revenue that's stable again in Clallam County.
I would just add that I too am in favor of funding the staff request that's been on hold. And in addition to everything Commissioner Chapman said, what impresses me is that the program is effective, and you're able to show the impact that it has in your focus areas very clearly. Yeah, I think that's important. So. Thank you for being here.
So at budget time, if you would come back to the Ivan and her team and walk us through, by then you'll have all your 2015 numbers, you'll probably have what you're seeing in 2016, and make sure if you need to make the case to move it to 3 for next year, see what the numbers look like, and just make sure you come back at budget time to make a follow-up presentation. I would appreciate that.
Sounds great.
You'll probably be a regular now.
Yeah. So based on this, go to HR and get the PAFs and all signed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
A report on property tax refunds made during the previous year for RCW 84.69.02. Treasurer, good morning.
As attached, as you first, by statute, we have to give you a list. That is what we did with the RCW, it spells out all the reasons why we give refunds. So this is the list. Just provided to you, there's no action required, it's a transparency requirement. Do you have any questions about this list?
Can you define manifest error?
Oh boy. That is something that the assessor implements. So the assessor reviews manifest, so the assessor has assessed property, and somebody comes in and says, well, this shed was never there, if you've been assessing it, then they can go back and say,
Gotcha.
it's a manifest error.
Gotcha.
Is there anything else we should be aware of?
So there's no action required at this time, this is just for your information.
This is really interesting, though. This is very interesting.
Yes. And then the second one is the proposed resolution canceling uncollectible personal property taxes. And so attached to that will be an executive summary. It gives the paragraph of the treasurer's office, we will diligently collect personal property taxes, but unlike real estate, you don't have that hammer of foreclosure. And ultimately, if there's no personal property because it was the business closed, we find personal property, at some point we have to take them off the books, because otherwise they keep getting assessed, and that actually hurts taxing districts.
Right.
So it's a very short list this year. The ones that we propose are.
That's really, that's good. I mean,
Yeah.
Staff has been working.
you guys are doing a great job.
Staff.
I think people realize that this list is short because of the work that your staff does in collecting these dollars.
Yeah, that was the
It used
biggest,
to be a lot longer.
the biggest thing that stood out to me, even without having seen a previous list, is it looked incredibly small. That's really great.
And this couldn't wait for today's work session and next week's transaction because it all has to be done by February 1st.
So I have
That's
no
why she's
problem
requested to go
canceling.
back to back.
I have no problem canceling these.
So any questions on this? Because then we'll be on for tomorrow's calendar. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Task cost consent decree regarding Salt Creek recreational area.
So what you have before you is exactly what that says. It's a task cost consent decree. It's basically a settlement with the Environmental Protection Agency for the small inspiring range that was established out at Camp Paving, Tongue Point, back in the World War II era. I hope to answer as many questions as I can today, as I'm not going to be here next week. I'll be in training. So basically what we have here is I've kind of laid out the basic scenario here in the summary. The military and the Coast Guard were the primary users of this base for a period, I think, of 18 years or something like that. And then we acquired the property in 1958, and the DNR acquired the adjacent property at approximately the same time. And during that property acquisition, there was a statement on there from the federal government indicating that, making sure that we were aware that this had been used as a range and with it. Keep in mind, this is all pre-CERCLA, okay? So fast forward, the Coast Guard continued to use the base. They actually spent some money increasing, or not increasing, but improving the range. They installed a phone system down at the butts, I guess, so apparently you can call and find out how well somebody shot. I'm not familiar enough with that to know, but so the federal government used it in conjunction with us up until about 1968. Our role in that, other than property owners, was that this commission allowed some small local gun clubs to use this in addition to the Coast Guard. And so, fast forward to 2010, there was an issue that arose over some concern of alleged lead contamination. And long story short, EPA came in and cleaned up the lead in the impact area, which is like the berm that they were shooting into. And what this does, they came in and did that under their authority in CERCLA. And CERCLA is a strict liability statute, meaning it doesn't matter who did it, doesn't matter why you did it, doesn't matter if it was intentional or not. It's there, you're going to be held responsible. So the EPA came in and cleaned it up, and I believe the total is somewhere in the neighborhood of 850. Yeah, so $800,000, give or take a few. And this all started before my tenure, but apparently this came about in 2013. The federal government was only willing to pay 70% of those costs. For a variety of reasons, there was a lot of negotiation going on, and it became clear about 6 months ago that the federal government was not going to move off of that 70% number. So this was a settlement that we think that everybody can live with. Everyone else has agreed to sign off. We are one of the last remaining signers of this. This money, this amount was, again, as I said, was approved last year and should already be allocated in the budget.
We paid out of our risk management account. We transferred, that's another one of those items that some people have argued they don't understand the budget, why we put money into risk management. This was exactly why, because we knew this settlement was coming. And in fact, one of the negotiating things we did is so we didn't have to do a budget emergency last year, we asked Grace to allow us to pay in January so we could put it in the budget and do it in the normal course of things and not run into that.
Right.
And so the money is allocated in the budget. It now just needs legislative approval and signing by the board to actually approve the settlement.
One of the things that I think it's important for this board to note is because of the challenges associated with negotiating with the federal government, we being myself and the attorney for DNR and the attorney for Washington National Guard, we really put a lot of pressure on EPA to help us out here, because while the feds don't consider this to be a large sum of money, we small organizations, this is a lot of money to consider. And under the law, under CERCLA, interest accrues from the moment EPA demands repayment. And so we had a period of roughly 2 years where we were accruing interest. And again, you know, DNR, Washington National Guard, and the county were saying this is unacceptable. We can't get the feds to do anything. It's not fair for you to punish us by accruing interest because we can't get someone else to move. And so EPA actually agreed to waive interest in this. So we are only paying for the actual cleanup costs EPA incurred.
This is really a coup for Christina, because that's just something that's never happened before. She did great work here.
Yeah, it was very much a team effort. We really worked we worked closely with DNR and Washington National Guard, and we were very much for as small as we are compared to the folks back in DC, I mean, we try to make ourselves a force to be reckoned with, and ultimately, I guess it's kind of a wash. We put forward some proposals that would have allocated more to the federal government because that's where we all believed it really should be. But again, the feds were not willing to play ball, and the alternatives would be to engage in litigation, which in all reality, this would have had to be hired out by outside counsel, and the cost would have been considerably more than what we're paying now. So a couple of things to note. Within 30 days of signature, we will need to put forward a notice of title, which is standard among these types of CERCLA, also known as Superfund sites, right? We have to identify it as a Superfund site and put those things on the notice of title, and it has to be sent to EPA for their approval. The other thing that we also need to do is if for some reason Joel would ever transfer the property or the county wherever to surplus it, we would also have to notify EPA of that change because EPA retains a right to come in and inspect or monitor or something like that for a period of time. One of the things that we also negotiated was that the EPA needs to give us prior notice and a reasonable expectation or a reasonable explanation of why they want to come out. They don't have to just come out willy-nilly. They need to come out and tell us that we think there's a problem. So the things that, other than those things, this will only resolve the actual cleanup for us. As with other settlements, it doesn't address any other issues that may arise, but it would resolve this issue once and for all.
And Joel, isn't it correct? I know you remember this, Commissioner Chapman, because we've dealt with this for so many times over so many years, but Commissioner Ozias, you're brand new to this. This literally came, as Christina said, from a citizen complaint back in 2010 that they actually came out and they dug, I don't know, 4 or 5 test holes, and they literally found one bullet in one test hole. And it was it was a solid, unbroken, solid bullet. But when that was extrapolated over the entirety of the site, finding one bullet in one test hole, that ended up being almost $1 million worth of expense to clean up the entire site. I mean, it was just kind of one of those things where the state, where we went first, said, no, there's not enough here to clean it up, but the federal government came in and did their own. Is that a fair statement?
Generally, they did find other signs of lead. I mean, obviously you're going to do that. It was never cleaned up in the first place, so it was an embankment where there was actually shooting involved. It actually started with a complaint to the county at the environmental health level. Environmental health followed up on it, and then they contacted ecology. Ecology came out and followed up on it, and they found that it didn't, as Jim stated, it didn't meet a level of concern based on other areas they had throughout the county. After that, it was then taken to the EPA, where the EPA followed up on it.
And they just cleaned it.
They
Cleaned it all.
They dug a significant section out of the field, and they all the contaminated material was then trucked out to Idaho and Oregon. Several loads.
So we're getting off cheap at 165.
I think, and it's something that the county could finally, close this chapter in Parks history there, and it's as good as I think we're going to get. So, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, nice job.
Thank you.
So it's
follow up on that. It was great. We worked on this, actually this started in 2008. It's been a long time. And lots of hours in our department and lots of hours in the prosecution department. So I'm really thankful for what you said. It was great.
So it's a red file item for the 9th.
So, as I mentioned, I won't be here next week to answer any questions, but I will, because I will be in training, but I will be available to answer questions anytime this week or...
Could you reach out to Commissioner Peach?
He's aware.
Just make sure he doesn't have any questions.
We had the same discussion during budget process, and he did approve putting it in the budget, so.
Yeah.
But I'll make sure that he's,
Just double check.
So you,
No,
so you
right.
will reach out?
I will do that.
Okay.
And no, just let me know Christina is gone next week, so
I
if
will.
he has any questions, get a hold of her this week.
I'll do that.
Thank you.
So it's everything under the administration, and we scheduled public works for 10:30, so we'll, with no objection, take a recess until 10:30.
That's fine.
No objection, so.
One question.
They just want to say
You get a red dot. Thank you.
I'd appreciate a couple of minutes overview, just to make sure I'm not missing something that is important as far as your concern.
Okay, the Cliff Notes version is, the park, and I generalize this because the park gets lumped into, as a figurehead for a whole lot of federal programs, that in this case, Western Federal Lands is a subdivision of the, what's the bigger federal, anyway, the group in Denver that does national parks as part of their stuff. Anyway, the park in its effort, I believe, to try to figure out a reasonable methodology for getting the improvements made around Lake Crescent, and also under their program to help local jurisdictions with infrastructure that benefits their properties or access to their properties. Anything federal, they have a certain amount of federal money that gets set aside in these programs to that local agencies can go after. It was the park that brought it to our attention that, hey, there's some federal money out there through Western Federal Lands Highways Program that could be used to resurface, in this case, East Beach Road. And the park was very interested in being a supporter of that, having them as essentially a yes, we think this is a good idea, co-signer to an application makes all the difference in the world whether the agency is going to do it. We went ahead and evaluated it. This started about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. The county applied for $990,000 or something like that. It was going to be a county engineered, administered type project. Western Federal Lands came back and said, why don't you let us do this? Because we'd like to fit it into a schedule that, interestingly enough, is very similar to what the proposal at the time was to get some fixes done around on Highway 101 around the lake. And by the way, we'd like to raise it from 990 to 1.7 million because we have our own administrative costs, we'd like to use our own engineers. We'll just basically take it out of your hands and do it for you. No downside to us whatsoever, although there is a county match to it. And on the 6-year transportation improvement program, of the 1.7 million, $280,000 roughly will be the county match to the 1.42 million of federal. So this is for the preliminary engineering phase. We've got $50,000 estimated as the county match for the $320,000 worth of Western Federal Land. This is a $28,000 installment on that $50,000. Now, $50,000 is an estimate. You may not, if any part of that $50,000 of our money isn't used, it gets rolled on down the line into eventually construction or whatever. So this is just a $28,000 installment on that $50,000. $50,000 worth of match.
Actually, 25,380 according to the paper.
Okay, 25,380.
Just so it-
Yes, actually, it's just right in front of me, but it. So that's that one.
So it's on for next week.
It is, red file item for the 9th.
Makes good sense.
There was an invitation to bid for the 2016 hot mix asphalt.
This is standard operating procedure. Each year we go out to bid for the asphalt products that we use during summertime. We use the regular hot mix asphalt to do dig outs and do leveling and patching. And generally we haul that in our own conveyance and put it in our own holes and compact it ourselves. We also get liquid asphalt from them to do the, what we call seal coat over the top of our chip seal that you'll see now, that throw our chip seal down and then we turn it black again.
Yes.
And that's been working real well. So this is the standard way that we bid for those items. And this is just an annual bid process.
It's also a red file item for next week.
And an agreement for the purchase of easement for the Olympic Discovery Trail.
Yeah, and we have detailed questions on this one. As far as history goes, I can get you more information from Joe Swordmaker. It's my impression that this is out in the east end of the county. This is this is just about out to the county line. It's beyond the east end of Clallam Bay. It's way out there. I don't know whether the description, if you know where Michigan School Road is, it's a old road, old Betfaars, about in the area of Betfaars logging on the north side.
Yeah, on the other side of that, yeah.
Anyway, this is just the intended path of the Olympic Discovery Trail as it finishes out towards the Jefferson County line has to go along mostly tribal property now and steel railroad grade. And this was an opportunity to produce or to acquire a 30-foot easement along this one particular piece of property. I believe we'll probably need to get you see the next property is would be to the west of that one. We'll probably, following the old railroad grade, we'll probably need to get a 30-foot easement there, a little tiny chunk. But these are just as they come up as property changes hands. And Joe Swordmaker, who's our right-of-way, lead right-of-way agent, just watches for these opportunities to piece the puzzle together. We're not actively constructing trail in that neck of the woods at this point in time. We're kind of throwing our efforts west of Port Angeles, but once the tribe kind of solidifies all their holdings in there and we'll into the county line, it's just one little tiny segment that will be part of that.
So is the ODT in general under the auspices of the roads department, or do you work with other county departments to make progress on completing the trail?
It's under the auspices of the road department. It's considered to be a alternate transportation facility in the big picture, which is why we're able to get a considerable amount of federal funding for these types of trails as opposed to maybe a sidewalk in some land or something like that. It's a regional trail system that's not just a trail, it's really classified as an alternate transportation system. And that's why we can be involved in it and why the County Road Administration Board state law allows a certain amount. It's money that will that you see in the budget every year when we come to you with a 6-year transportation annual. We talk about how much is going to be applied to trails. And so it allows the transportation restricted funding that comes into the road department and stuff from the gas tax and stuff like that, that have very specific rules of having to be used for transportation structure, allows us to use that on the Olympic Discovery Trail in this case.
And just so you know, both the state and the federal government, in regards to getting through the park, and the county have long prioritized as a public safety issue to try and get bikes and hikers off of Highway 101. And so that's where these grants are coming from as a primary safety issue. And ultimately, all the way from Port Townsend to LaPush, we'll be able to do it without being on a highway.
So 30 feet at a time. Let's do it.
That's on the next week.
It is.
No questions? Thank you. That's it for Public Works. We have about 3 minutes until the next set of items, so we'll recess for 3 minutes. First time we'll be back at 1:45.
It's all set in the picture.
No, absolutely.
How do you like it in your house?
That's good practice to
Ms. Mark? Yes. Discussion on our Washington State Association of Counties amicus brief for Washington County's risk pool versus Clark County.
So I'll give you a little bit of background on this to provide some context behind the request. And at the heart of this is a story involving events that have unfolded in Clark County, Washington. By way of brief background, Clark County, like Clallam, is a member of the Washington County's risk pool. They joined the pool in 2002. Fast forward to 2012, Clark County received a claim for damages of some size and went ahead and tendered defense of the claim to the Washington County risk pool. It's important to note that these claims were in connection with events that occurred in 1993. Particularly, there was 2 gentlemen who were arrested for, prosecuted, and imprisoned on rape charges. And so they've been in prison from 1993 for a number of years. Again, have alleged that they were wrongfully imprisoned, wrongfully arrested. This all sounds like a civil rights violation. The pool responded to Clark County and articulated that because the events in question long predated Clark County's joining the risk pool, that they did not rise to the level of an occurrence, as that term is defined within the agreement, and therefore the pool denied coverage. Following that denial, Clark County entered into a settlement agreement with these individuals to the tune of $34.5 million. Clark County has paid $10.5 million, and what it has done is essentially direct these 2 individuals to collect the remainder from the risk pool. And so this creates an issue for the other 28 counties roughly that belong to the risk pool. And it raises a legal issue regarding whether or not the risk pool is properly treated under state law as a commercial insurer, or instead something slightly different that's authorized by statute.
Mark,
Yes.
is it unusual for individuals to be handed off to the risk pool like that, or do they frequently interact with individuals.
I can only speak to my knowledge and experience working with this pool over about the last 12 years. I've never seen this sort of scenario unfold.
Okay, so this is unusual.
I think it's unusual in the pool of issues that are being advanced, and I should note that they're actually going to be heard by the state Supreme Court are really essentially first impression issues. And the issue, if you distill it down, is whether or not the risk pool should be properly treated akin to a commercial insurer with the attendant duties to defend, identify, and hold harmless in concert with the line of cases addressing that, or if instead it should be recognized for frankly what it is, which is something different. It's a statutorily authorized creation. It's equivalent to a joint self-insurance pool, but it's different from a commercial insurer. So we're dealing with fairly thick subject matter here. But the ultimate resolution of the case is quite important for those counties that participate in this pool, because if the state Supreme Court were to reach the decision that the Washington County risk pool were obligated to comply with the line of cases that attach to commercial insurers, our liabilities would be greatly expanded compared to what they currently are. So what's happening is that the pool has council working on this. They have reached out to the other counties that participate in Washington County's risk pool. They're asking for the legislative bodies of those counties to sign off on a request to WASAC, the Washington Assistant Counties, for it to author and submit an amicus brief to the state Supreme Court explaining the position and why it believes county risk pool should be treated differently than a commercial insurer. And so that's the request before you today.
Any recommendation?
I think it would be helpful to have guidance from the state Supreme Court on this issue. And I think it would be helpful to have literature from trade associations that are involved with and who are familiar with county government. WASAC certainly qualifies as such, and so simply sounding our vote of support saying we think it would be great for you to author a friend report pleading something that I think would be very helpful. It would offer a different perspective for the court as it was about ferreting out and deciding the issues. So I recommend it. I don't see any harm to doing it.
Is there, what time frame would this need to be accomplished within?
I think February 3rd is the next business meeting for WASAC, so it's a pretty quick time.
They can receive it tomorrow, it will be considered in their meeting.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Peach isn't here since he's our board's representative to WASAC. And I don't necessarily want to hold up the process, but it seems like it would be appropriate for Commissioner Peach to have some input.
Yes.
Personally. So,
So we wouldn't, to be clear, Clallam County wouldn't be offering or submitting anything to the state Supreme Court. This is simply one county that participates in this pool that would, I think, be echoing a request by other pool counties for WASAC to have someone author and submit a plea to the state Supreme Court.
Gotcha. What would potential drawbacks be? It doesn't seem like there's much of it.
I can't think of it, frankly.
So what do you need from the board?
There's
Just sign this form.
Yes, there's a form letter that they sent out to each of the counties that participate in Washington County's risk pool, and they're asking for those counties that want to support the effort to have a legislative body sign a letter, and WASAC will take that, provided there's 2 or more commissioners as buying for a particular county that they would like to see breaking down this issue.
And because of the publishing deadline, we were not able to receive the agenda item summary that pointed it out in more clarity. But I was under the impression that was coming today.
It was in the office.
Oh, given the Trish. So, it is listed as a as a consent agenda item tomorrow. And my understanding was it was just simply asking the board to approve on behalf of the county signing on to the amicus brief.
Would it be possible to see if Commissioner Peach has any feedback on this before adding that to the consent agenda, since he's not going to be here tomorrow?
I can certainly call him if you like and ask him if he's seen it and if he had any problem with it.
Well,
Do that.
I just want to make sure that, you know, that he's had a chance to have some input on it, particularly since he won't be here tomorrow.
Okay.
One thing that's, only because the request itself is pretty thick reading, the history is fascinating, but frankly, for most people, they read this stuff and it's like reading the back of a paint can. Not that interesting. I think what I find very important, and it's something noteworthy, is that at the heart of what's occurring is a request for the state Supreme Court to answer the question of whether a joint self-insurance group comprised by counties or counties should be treated any different from like a private sector commercial insurer. And for many people, they say, who cares? What difference does it make? The reason it makes a real difference is because if you look at county government just as one form of governmental entity in the state of Washington, we are obligated by statute to perform many, many extraordinarily high-risk functions by operation of law. And you need
Pretty much all of them.
You need to look around the room, and you know, the sheriff is charged with overseeing the jail. Extraordinarily high function, high liability function. We've got a DCD director who oversees all things land use, very high liability work. We don't get to pick and choose what we do, is my point. State law requires county government to do all these things. We have, you know, miles and miles of roads that we maintain. And so it makes sense that counties, through their joint self-insurers, be treated somewhat differently and frankly shielded from some liabilities that otherwise attach to commercial insurers who get to pick and choose what they're going to be insuring and doing. So that distinction is sometimes lost on folks, but again, counties, much like cities, and they have city risk pools who are probably following this, and I would be surprised if they submit their own needs. Cities are mandated to do things as well that are very high liability, high risk. They don't have any choice but to do them. And so from a public policy perspective, that's why the legislature saw fit to create a statute allowing for the creation of these joint self-insurance pools by operation of statute, and has traditionally viewed them as separate and distinct from commercial insurers with all the obligations that attach.
Can we do that here?
No.
They're on their risk pool board, right?
Correct.
So this is something the risk pool's hoping the WASAC weighs in on?
Well, this is generated by the risk pool in order to deliver the message to WASAC, as the brief is. So it's all of the 26 counties are involved with it, I'm sure. I haven't gotten a readout on that yet, but I'm sure they are. It's a pretty critical, as Mark points out, it's a pretty critical issue.
Hard to imagine what the impact on counties' premiums paying into the risk pool would be if they were going to be liable for, all the way back in history. So it's easy to see the importance of what you're talking about. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it's item 1D, and I'll bring you back with any comments or ask Commissioner Peach to call in with them if he's got it tomorrow or again.
Great, thanks.
Well, I'm looking at this is, he doesn't want it on the agenda tomorrow.
Or that would be his initial comments, yes. I'll find out.
Request from the public area, public access, from the Peninsula area, public access television for funding for live streaming of county meetings.
Well, yes, it came from Dale. He sent it in to Trish, asking if it could get put on the agenda, and so I filled out the agenda item summary. And essentially, you may remember last year, PAPA, Peninsula Area Public Access Television, came with a presentation asking to be put into the budget. And the board at that time, I'm thinking, was that April or May last year? I don't remember now exactly.
It was later than that.
It was okay. Anyway, the board asked me to review it and review the request and work with Dale and also work with IT and come back with a suggestion for of whether or not I thought it was valuable to the county to be in this partnership and how much I suggested we should put into the budget. So doing all that, I did believe that there was value to the county entering into a contract to show we can't really live stream because our system, and that's why Debbie's here to make sure I don't screw this one up. but we just flat out do not have the ability. Our pipe coming in and going out is so overloaded now with information and data coming and going out of the county and out of the county. We just don't have the ability to live stream. So that was passed on to PAPA as being a problem, and it was suggested that they come back with a different request, and because it was too late to get it in the budget, to bring it back after the first of the year with the new board, and so that's what they've done. So here they are, making the new request.
And just so that you know, I'm Debbie Early, IT Director, my network analyst, Alan Coleman. So I don't step in things that the technical folks tell me I shouldn't be. I just want to put it right out on the table. I'm not saying no to providing the public access to the county commissioner meetings. I just need to make sure that we do it for all of the taxpayers, as well as making sure that we can still maintain county government through the bandwidth that we do have. So.
Okay, I think there's a bit of a misnomer here because nothing in PAPA's proposal requires impingement on the county's bandwidth. Okay. We will be doing this with our own connections. Okay. Live streaming may be a bit of a misnomer too because at least in
that was the old request. The new request doesn't have that in it.
Right. It would be great if in the second or third year that we could provide the hardware that would allow live streaming. But of course, again, that would be on PAPA's dime and not on the county's. What we're really trying to accomplish here is this is a broad, wide county. When you go from the east end to the west end of the county, there's a lot of people that can't get down here for these meetings, not only because of the geographical distance, but also because a lot of people work here this time of day and are unable to come down and share with what's going on here. And in addition to that, I hope you've read the proposal I sent out, and I know you first thought it was a bit of hyperbole because this really is, in my opinion, one of the greatest things that is opportunities that have been provided to the county for stitching the county together from its various, not only the 3 commissioner districts, but from all of the tribes, the more remote locations, to be able to find out more about what is going on in the community. That's one part of it. But another part of it is talking about economic development for a second. I'm just going to give you a scenario that might happen when a family of 4 comes down from Olympia or Boise or the Shasta region in Northern Oregon. They would come up here perhaps just to ride bicycles up the Hurricane Ridge. We hope to have an outreach to all the lodging companies in town and urge them when the cleanup staff leaves the room to tune their television to the public access channel. So when this family comes in, they turn on the television. They've made arrangements to come one night, stay Friday night, ride up the bridge and back and go home on Saturday. When they turn on the television, they see not only the about the bike trip, the whale watching, the sprint boat racing, the snowboard competitions, the kayaking and rafting opportunities, steelhead trout fishing, Underworld Cup bicycle sponsorships, the surfing on the North Coast, the county camping opportunities, the dark night photography, the Swim Lavender Festival, the Irrigation Festival, the fishing and lake present, the Olympic Game Farm, the scuba and free diving in the strait, all the waterfalls, the Mammoth Museum, the wing walking at the Swim Airport, the adventure routes at the Olympic Discovery Trail, the Dungeness River fishing, Elwha River fishing, workforce training at Peninsula College. These people will very likely pick up the telephone and call the front desk and say, can you extend my visit until Sunday night? Because there's too much here to pass up. So we think that it's going to be an opportunity to not only provide coverage of the city and county government events, but also to be a great entree for tourists that, you know, there's 5 million people come to town already for the Olympic Park and what the ferry leaves here, the Coco Ferry. So with 5 million people here, if we could get every one of those people to come through town to spend one night in town or extend their trip on one day, I think a lot of our economic difficulties would be alleviated. It would be 5 million more stays a night. We'd have to build new facilities to provide them all. So I do not think that this is too much hyperbole to realize that with public access television, not only will we be able to knit the county together and let everybody know what is going on at their seat of government, but also it would help people that are already in the county to know more about the county attractions that are available to them, but also when people come to visit, have them to stay longer. Now, if somebody comes in and were to have a business somewhere in one of those regions I talked about, and was thinking about relocating because of the expense of operating in more urban areas, and if they saw a program on Peninsula College and how quickly they could retool to provide workforce training, then they might start inquiring about moving their companies up here and hiring some of our people, and that would affect our unemployment rate. So with just this little bit that I'm talking about here and what you see in the proposal I sent you, I have no doubt that this would be one of the best investments that the county could make in helping get PAPA up and running. And I also want to add that as soon as we can get up and running, we're going to have a product that is going to be much more attractive to grants people, and we will be able to put on our own grants writers, and we'll be able to become self-supporting in at least the first year and a half. So this is not an ongoing expense. It is something that would be very helpful to help us get up and running, and it would not require any of the bandwidth of the county. Most of these county meetings would be on a 24 to 48 hour delay. We do not intend to try to edit them or anything like that because there could be some concern that we would change the message. So it would be very much like a C-SPAN, to where there's a camera in the room that records everything. Now, once a week we would try to do a news digest, which boils down some of the information not only from the city and the county, but also the planning meetings, the budget meetings, all those things that have an impact on people's lives. We would be able to edit that down into a story that would be more palatable to people on a 30-minute or an hour-long broadcast. So we will actually have, for the first time, a public access channel available to the 20 to 25,000 subscribers to Wave Cable, and they have promised us 3 different channels. So really, we hope to graduate to having one channel, which will be public, educational, and government, to actually having a separate channel for each of those. And that would mean that there would be one channel dedicated to all the things that happen in the city and county government, another one to the things that are happening at the colleges and at the high school, and the other one for programming that is created by independent producers right here in the county. And PAPA will have a media center where we will train independent producers to actually put together their own storytelling, their own packages, their own documentaries, which extol the virtues of the many things to make more people aware of in Clallam County. So with that, I'll be glad to answer the questions that you may have.
Can you, first of all, tell me a little bit more about the 3 media centers, one in each district, and maybe tell me, describe a little bit more about how you would imagine those working. Where's the equipment going to come from? Do you have spaces identified, and who what's your target audience? You know, who would be using those facilities?
And as a part of our agreement with the city of Port Angeles, we must provide a media center for training here in Port Angeles. We do not want that to be the only media center here because it is a long way to travel, as I've said before. So we would like to envision a media center in Swim and possibly one in Forks or somewhere on the west end, so that not only would people not have to travel so far, but they would be able to have more of their own stories told in their own voices without having to go to the expense of travel and scheduling time here. We have a lot of equipment that's already been donated from other public access channels that could be used for the training part of it. And then, of course, when they get ready to do their own, they would be able to access the newer equipment, which will be funded by a grant from Wade Cable. And that grant is for $60,000, and it's only for equipment. So it doesn't cover any salaries, rents, utilities, anything like that. So we're going to have the $60,000 grant to buy the equipment that we need, not only for the studio, but for the media center. And I'm quite certain we could find space either with the Peninsula College site in Forks, and hopefully there's a media room in the new city hall in Swing. I don't know if that's big enough, but we would certainly approach them about doing something like that. But we do want to make it, and we have a very talented young man who spent 7 years with NBC, who is now actually teaching at the halftime. He's teaching at the Skill Center, and he would be available to go around to these other locations and do the training classes in a similar fashion to what he's already teaching at the Skill Center. So he will be rotating for in the near term. Hopefully, as this grows and more people get interested, we will be able to actually put on another full or part-time trainer to go around to these different media centers and train people in those areas to be able to provide their own programming for Papa.
Okay, so there's a media room in Swim a couple years down the road. Give me an example of who would use it.
Anybody that's interested, and it would be free of charge. Excuse me, any county resident that wants to use it. Now, there'd be small fees of $15 for certain classes, or $15 for an editing class, $15 for a photography class, or a writing class. So there'd be a minimum amount, but for the most part, they would be able to check out when they had trained and been signed off on the equipment, then they would be able to check out the newer equipment and go out and do their video capture, and we would have them edited and be able to present it to not only the local audience, but we also have, we were in an alliance with all of the public access channels in the Northwest. And with that, we can trade out video. So we can send all these wonderful videos about what a great place we have here in Clallam County, send it down to Shasta, send it down to Minden, Oregon, send it down to Oregon, send it down to Boise, and hopefully entice some of those people that are looking for a place to take their families on vacation and let them come here. But at the same time, they will be providing us programming, who will be showing the virtues of their places. So it's a really good opportunity to spread the word in a nearly cost-free fashion.
And do you already have an agreement with the city of Port Angeles?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of equipment to record meetings here in the Board of Commissioners room, what do you envision that looking like?
That would be a board decision, but what I've been researching and thinking about is having a type of a GoPro. I'm using that as a generic term, but there's a Sony camera and a GoPro. They're both very small, non-intrusive. They would mount on the ceiling. They would have a 340 degrees ratio and pick up audio and video. And so while these meetings are happening here, while they're happening up there would be somebody that would come in with their laptop, plug into the lead, and be able to control the audio and video from the audience without being intrusive at all, and be able to pick up and capture everything that's going here as far as recording it, and then take it back to the studio and present it, or to put it on the scheduler so that it would be broadcast.
And would there be any issues relating to public records requests?
Well, there could certainly be, as we understand it now, and if we own the equipment, if we recorded it, we'd have some significant issues in regards to public records request. If instead we had a contract with a private party just to allow them to use their own equipment and to post their own YouTube videos, no, we wouldn't, because we didn't own it, we didn't determine the content. we weren't storing it. So that was.
Is that what the 24,000 would be? Is
Yes,
the contract
that would
with
be the
them?
contract with them.
On that thought, let me add this, and again, I don't think the board would have any concerns about that, but we are dedicated to public access. Anything that was captured here, if somebody wanted to get a copy of it, they would certainly be available to them. But now, I don't know of any instances where that would be considered a public record, because it's not a public record. This is what's giving us a public record now. So I have no qualms about releasing anything that would be captured here as far as video and audio, but I don't think it would ever be something where that you would be responsible for what we upload.
Ellen has a question.
My concern when I read this was the fact that if this was recorded and taken off-site, then the county does not actually have other than a video recording, that we actually house ourselves.
The audio recording.
The audio recording, sorry. So my belief is that if we sponsor, support, or whatever, any kind of video recording, I think we need to maintain some sort of ownership or a backup copy or something like that.
That would be where we have to ask the
Right.
prosecutor's office.
This isn't the first time that IT has been involved with it based on the executive summary. And in the early conversation, it was basically about live streaming. And I'm a believer in live streaming, and I believe there's a way to do it. There's other entities out there currently doing it. What I have here is, kind of talks about what Jim talked about, which was the bandwidth of the county. The county's bandwidth, what you're seeing here are basically captures of the network performance for the county as it currently sits. What you need to account for is what is called the upload speed of any internet connection. When you are webcasting or streaming a service, it is your upload capacity that is actually what's controlling what your bandwidth really is for a webcast. And basically our upload, we talked about the fact that we have several services that utilize that upload, and on the right side it kind of talks about things like that. The county recently invested in some video conferencing solutions for the courts, which is in its infancy. We're still not actually using it to full capacity, so that is going to grow. So let me talk about what other entities are doing. Other entities are using a single stream upload that goes to basically a broadcast provider. That broadcast provider then allows the public access to that content. Those entities have entered into a subscribership with those broadcasting companies, so they maintain ownership of the recorded content, the housing of that content, and things like that are done by those entities. So my suggestion might be is that the public access would simply grab that feed. If our intent is to go to live streaming, to allow people to watch either a on-demand version of these meetings or any other meeting for that matter, and as well as watch it live, that we might consider looking at that direction for that content.
So you're suggesting there is no problem? I mean, I've been led to believe that.
There is a problem
major
if we
problem
host it.
with us.
There's a problem if we host it. Well, number one.
We own it, it's a public record, is my understanding.
I understand that, but if you look at our bandwidth, if I put a media server in our network that the public accesses, the average high-quality video stream is 256 kilobits per second. 4 connections equals 1 megabit. So if you take 1 megabit for 4 people, it doesn't take a math genius to figure out that 4 megabits get saturated by 16 connections to the county's network. That takes everything else we've got down offline.
So what he's saying is instead of us hosting it,
We would simply do one stream up to a hosting provider. That hosting provider would then allow, we would basically have a link in our website, but the actual content is delivered from the hosting provider.
It's very similar to the videos that are out on our main page, down there at the bottom, that are hosted off-site, they're produced off-site. We own the content, copyright, they can't change that without our permission. So therefore, we have it in its entirety unedited, but it's elsewhere. So when somebody clicks on that, even though the web page is on our servers downstairs, when they click on that, they're actually sent elsewhere, and they're not impacting us. So what we were thinking is you want to be able to broadcast to the wave broadband stations, which a concern that immediately came to my mind, as well as Alan's, is not everybody in the county is a wave broadband subscriber. So in order to get county government out to all taxpayers, then if we did something such as subscription to an outside provider, and then you grab that information from them, it bypasses everything here. It's just one small stream going up, and then they take care of everything, provides you with what you want for the wave broadband connection, provides all county residents the ability to either watch it live streaming or watch it on demand later because it's being recorded, and provides more of a full county coverage rather than just the wave broadband subscribers. Because the other concern I had as a taxpayer, I'll be honest with you, is first of all, if I pay wave for my connection, now I'm also as a taxpayer paying City of Port Angeles, and I'm paying the county for them to give you access into that. So I'm paying twice just to watch the county information, whereas there's a lot of citizens that are not wave broadband subscribers at this point in time. So we were kind of looking at the bigger picture, so to speak, and still satisfy public access TV, because yes, I love the fact of being able to go into a hotel room. I don't know which channel of the three you're going to ask them to leave it on. It probably is not going to be county government.
Probably not.
It's probably going to be more on the tourism and the parks. So I love that fact of being able to provide that, but I was looking at kind of the bigger picture of being able to look at live streaming, not down the road, but a little bit more closer at hand.
Well, I appreciate that, and just want to point out to the commissioners here that a lot of what you two have just said, it is not included in my proposal. And I think it's great ideas, and it's certainly something that Papa wants to aspire to in the not-too-distant future. But I don't want that to get conflated into what we're suggesting, which is not much different than what Stephanie has been doing for the last year or so, and taking it off and putting it up. Now, we intend to archive the information too, so that if anybody is unable to get it at one particular time, then they can go back to their computer and be able to access it at any time. So if people like me that wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning can't get back to sleep, and they're just absolutely riveted to what the county commission did today, they can get their money slippers on and go down and watch today's meeting. So that's really what we want to do, is to be able to make it not only available at it'll be pre-recorded, of course, and it'll take a while to get it on the scheduler, and then within 24 to 48 hours, people will be able to watch this meeting that happened today, that they're going to watch it by Wednesday, if we were already in effect of what we're asking for. So we're not looking at live streaming right now, but it's certainly something that we want to do.
And basically, the way I read this was that we were going to get a product from it. And in reality, we're not getting a product from it.
Well, we think that the program...
No, I'm sorry. This is basically, you're asking for a support of public access from the county, but not that the county is getting a product.
Well, the product will be that it is going to be broadcast to wave cable subscribers throughout the county.
Okay.
Yes.
So the support is to broadcast to wave cable subscribers, but not dish subscribers, direct TV subscribers.
Right. But anybody who has a computer with an internet connection will be able to go right on Papa's website and get most of the programming that we put up.
How long do you see that before that happens?
Well, it depends on how quickly this group...
Okay, so that will be part of this whole process, is to actually still make available on the internet
Absolutely.
in a delayed fashion.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, because when I read your proposal, I was assuming that it was just only available to WAVE subscribers.
No, it'll be available around the world to anybody, alumni that graduated from Port Angeles High School 20 years ago now living in Japan. They can find out what the city council and the county commission is doing too.
Okay.
So I would just suggest that we look into the aspect of if we're going to support a recording, then do we need to have it?
Right.
Or be stewards of it? We're stewards of the email communication that happens in the county. As IT, we take that responsibility. We take responsibility of the data that transpires.
But then that becomes a problem because of storage space.
The way that I'm thinking about this right now is I see that the public access channel is a bigger subject than recording the commissioners' meetings and
Yes,
other public
yes,
meetings.
yes.
And I can tell you that in general, I would like to be supportive of public access television for all the reasons we've talked about here. Before dedicating any dollars to that, I would need to see a more detailed business and strategic plan. For example, it's easy to, and you may have more of this information that you didn't prepare today, but it's easy to say, well, we'll be self-sufficient in 2 years because there's grant funding out there. But I would need to understand a little bit more about where you expect that to come from and a better sense of how much would you expect hotels, for example, to pay to subscribe to this service that would be a benefit to the tourism industry, et cetera. So when we look at the big picture, public access television, in order to be supportive, I would need a lot more detail about how you expect that to roll out specifically. And by the way, since the conversation about live streaming and who owns the data is complex, I would want to make sure that what we're doing to move in that direction is well thought out and is moving in the direction that is appropriate in terms of our technological needs, appropriate in terms of public access, et cetera. With regard to recording these meetings and other public county meetings and putting them up on YouTube, is that piece of the service something that I would love to find a way to do that right away, and I think that's something that we ought to be prioritizing. Would you be able or willing to segregate that piece of work from the big picture and come back to us and tell us, if we were to provide this recording and uploading service for public meetings, not dealing with live streaming yet, but just recording and uploading as we, in the short term, what that cost would be? Is that something you could segregate and sort of bid out for us?
That's what this proposal covers, is for PAPA to come in and video the county commission meetings, the work sessions, the financial planning, the budget committees, all of those meetings that you have in a year's time would be videotaped and broadcast to WAVE cable subscribers and available to anyone in the world that has a computer for this $24,000 that we're suggesting that the county invest. And that's all that we're trying to do. We're not trying to fold in this amount that we're talking about here with all of our other projects, because they will be different. And we hope to have a similar working agreement with SWIM to cover their meetings, hopefully with Fork to cover their meetings. But those will each be different types of contracts and it'll be paper for service, because we do intend to, you must know that almost every city of this size and county of this size has public access, and this is the same thing. This is nothing new. This is 50-year-old, probably 30-year-old information that we're talking about. And so that's all we're trying to do, is to get the county to help provide the funding for us to be able to come in for all those hours. I think it's something like 250 hours in a year's time of just the planning meetings and the council meetings. and then you add to that the finance meetings, the budget meetings, there's going to be a lot of time invested. And that's the other reason I think it'd be a good idea to get a stationary camera posted either here in the center or up there, so that whoever the technician is would come in with just plug in their laptop. And that's the funding we're talking about is dedicated to serving the county and getting the county's business before the county taxpayers. So let's not conflate anything else with what we're suggesting here.
So, in other words, everything, all the information that you included about the future of the public access television and those plans don't relate to what you're asking for right now?
Correct.
Okay, so, so for you, or I guess it'd be who would if we were to sign a contract, who would the contract be with?
Well, Peninsula Area Public Access, PAPA.
Okay, and so if we were to sign a contract, what you're saying is that for $24,000 between now and the end of the year, PAPA would record every public, what would the threshold of meeting be that you would record?
It would be in consultation with the county for the things that, when we first made the proposal, we figured that there would be coming in to capture the video and then going back and editing it to have a package, professional package ready. We realized immediately that some of the county commissioners may or may not want an edited package because there was fear that they might change the message or change the complexion of the meeting. And so that's the reason we scaled it back to what we have now, because that would just provide a C-SPAN type other person in the room. So now, not to say that we wouldn't use some of that feed for a news package, a weekly news package, but as far as what we would capture, we would put exactly what happened and if somebody missed a page in a packet and it took 2 minutes to go back in the other room and get it, that would just be 2 minutes of dead airspace while people looked at each other and nothing would be changed, nothing would be edited in or out.
All right. Would there be any reason, I'm in favor of finding a way to provide this service for county residents. Would there be any reason that we would not want to send out an RFP?
No, we would, per our policy, we would need to send out an RFP unless there was some reason to believe that this was a complete sole source provider.
This is a sole source provider right now because of professional services agreement.
Last year, the county got in trouble by doing a contract for $10,000 with no RFP, no public hearing. And once again, I have to put on the record that I'm not interested in repeating the mistakes of last year. To move this forward, we have to put out a request for proposals. We have to look at what the bids are. We have to have the public hearing to amend the budget. And then my last point would be is I personally would like to move this to the county leadership team meeting that we planned for April. This is a big change, and I've not heard from the county leadership team what their feelings are. I've heard a little bit from IT. So for me, to do the RFQ, to do the budget proposals, and the schedule, I would schedule this as an item for the county leadership team. Then we can decide as a leadership team whether this is a service that we want to provide. In the meantime, we have the proposals. We know what the bids were to basically record and make available the work sessions, the commissioner meetings, any leadership team meetings that are public.
Well, I think a lot of requirements such as, even installing, the $24,000 include cost to facilities to install that GoPro or whatever camera is, I understand there's multiple.
So that could be fleshed
So
out in the
there-
request.
all of that could be fleshed out in the
And then we
RFP.
have the budget here, then if the board after if the leadership team said, yeah, that this is something we think the board of commissioners should look at, then we go to a public hearing for such an amendment. Very open process. We've had no opportunity yet for the budget to weigh in on any of these ideas, and so for me, again, not wanting to repeat mistakes of last year, contracts given with only one elected commissioner voting for them, we're just not going to do that. We also have to get Commissioner Peach's buy-in on all of this process. I'm not going to, we just can't do what happened last year ever again. So it's going to take a little time, but I would suggest that, we bring this back when Bill's going to be here, get his input, bring back the details, bring back whatever the request for proposal might look like, what the budget hearing process would look like, make sure that he agrees. I don't know what your thoughts are as far as taking this to the leadership team, but this seems like the exact kind of decision in the previous year the board made with no consultation with the leadership team. This is the kind of decision that I think should go to the leadership team.
I am in favor of that, and particularly because I think this is, I agree with you that this is an important strategic decision for the county as an organization to make. I think that it's important for us to be doing everything we can to enable and facilitate as much access as we can. It's a highly complicated issue, and we want to make sure we do it the right way. And so I'm supportive of that one.
Let me add one more thing, and I'm not sure what the franchise agreement is between the county and Wave Cable, but I'm sure the county is getting something for the lease of telephone poles and that sort of thing.
Our franchise, and I know I gave you a copy of it a couple years ago when you asked for it, you may have long ago forgotten about it, but our franchise is totally about fixing our roads. They're in our road right away. We have no poles, we have no, we don't have any amount of money for services or extra. The entirety of our franchise agreement talks about their requirement to fix our roads if they damage it, to go in and check their wires. We don't have operating agreements, we don't have licenses for use like the cities do, and so our franchise, we do get money, but it's all about just being in our road. It's totally that, and fixing it if they have to go in and repair it.
Well,
This would be general fund money.
Yeah. Let me offer my services as a consultant next time you do a franchise agreement, because there's a lot of money left on the table, I fear. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Efforts to put this together.
Probably the best thing would be to bring this issue back next week when Bill's here.
Okay.
And then figure out, should we go to the leadership team first before we and have them help us put together a proposal, or should we not? Kind of figure out, work with Bill. Next week we can figure out what our time frame is to move forward. And if we have to move it up, we can move it up into the next leadership team meeting if we have a few other issues. I don't know what Bill's thoughts are. So I hate to like go to a proposal, through a public hearing, and then, oh, by the way, now we're going to ask the leadership team what we should do.
Right.
Well, and the other, I can't speak for the rest of the leadership team, I can only speak for my team. And that is, we would need to know where it fits in the priority of all the other projects that we're trying to get done.
Well, that's why the leadership team would weigh in, because they're all going to remind the board, okay, this project hasn't been done. I was talking to the examples, I was talking to the judges last week, they still have some issues that they would like cleared up. So I think that that's part of, maybe that would be a standalone meeting on just IT and IT priorities, and then this would slide into that. That actually might be a reason to move that meeting up sooner, if it's just on the priorities of the IT. And that's one of the things, everyone's like,
Well, facilities is
priorities.
going to get involved too, so.
Right.
So
So it is.
Gentlemen, I'm not sure that you appreciate the ancillary benefits of what we're talking about here. Yes, this would be $24,000 of taxpayer money and to make this available, but as I stated earlier, the economic development benefits of this are incalculable. The tourist development ancillary benefits are incalculable. So I hope you won't get bogged down in the weeds of how we're going to pay for it, and without specifically looking at the other ancillary benefits of not only training all of these people to be their own independent producers, creating these 8 to 12 jobs that we will create in the very near future, which is more than the Economic Development Council has created in the last few years, and for $150,000 budget last year. So we intend to deliver, and we will intend to deliver a product that everybody would be proud of, and the benefits will be far-reaching to every corner of this community. And it's not just a matter of your meetings getting out there, it's being able to provide all these other ancillary services that will come in with those meetings.
Well, that is clear to me, and that's why I was trying to separate the bigger picture of the public access channel in general from the logistical details of what we're talking about here. And I would be very interested to see a more fully formed plan for the public access station in general, so that we can have a conversation about what the county's role out to be, if we opt to have one in supporting that station. So,
and let me add one more thing. The difference in what the county would be putting up and what the taxpayers would be getting out of it, I think that it boiled down to this could be provided to every subscriber, wave cable subscriber in the county for less than $1.50 a year. So I don't know where you can get a bigger bang for $1.50 than promoting public access channel.
We have a process we have to work through, and when we have circumvented that process in years past, the public roundly criticized the board, and I'm not interested in this board repeating those mistakes.
Oh, I can appreciate
I
that.
think you were one of the ones that has roundly criticized the board, so hopefully we have to work through the process. We have to incorporate our leadership team in this decision. No one, and we have to go through a request for proposal to see if anybody else out there would provide this service.
Well, there's, that was the other thing I was going to say. There's only one, the county doesn't have a public access channel available to it. Only the city does. So there's not anybody else out there that can provide this. So I don't know who would be putting up another request for proposal because there's only that one available channel. There's only one access. There's 3 channels available, but there's only one access. And right now, Papa has that contract with the city, so I'm not sure who else would provide.
But that's over wave cable.
Right.
I'm just saying, that's over wave cable. If I put a link on the Clallam County website to stream the meeting, that's available to anybody with an internet connection.
Yes, and
So that is our public access channel for the county.
Right. But now these tourists are coming and checking in the hotel, they're not going to run their computer check on the county's website, they're going to probably.
And I would argue that I don't go on a trip without planning my trip ahead of time and seeing what's available. And I usually use the internet to do that, and chances are the Clallam County website might come up in my search hit, and I might see the link to be able to see that. I'm just saying that's
You're one of those rare individuals that claim to hit.
No, because I will do things spontaneous, but I don't think I've ever seen it in the hotel room. I've never actually turned on the hotel channel to see what's going on around. I've gone and gotten a tourist brochure, or I've seen something. This is just an offline. I don't know if you say that.
Let's at least bring us back to Commissioner Peach can see what his thoughts are, and then maybe we can formulate a plan for moving forward. But I completely agree that this has to be incorporated with the whole county-wide plan for IT services. It can't just be considered as a standalone issue.
Well, I'm not sure how the IT services would even be involved in it.
If the commissioners decide that they would rather have the RFP go out to live streaming companies, first of all, I need to be involved, my tech team needs to be involved in what is going into that RFP. Then, once we are doing all that contract and we are working with them, and then you provide the feed to public access television from that site instead, I need to make sure that if we get a public records request that I deal with the company, that we have equipment in here that will upstream to that company.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. You're putting things in the proposal
I'm
that
looking
are not
at-
in it.
Right, but what I'm saying is that for that $24,000, you have one solution. We need to look at a multitude of solutions to see what's the best way to spend that $24,000 and still serve the public. And I think that's what the commissioners are asking. What exactly are we getting for that $24,000?
And that's what, and to be perfectly honest, that's what I think the proposal is more of a support of them getting up and going than it is for us to receive a product for that money. So in other words, what you're voting on is supporting public access television. It's just what level of support you want to give public access television. What they do with that money is up to them, the way I look at it. In other words, if they choose to come here and record, if they choose to come here and put a camera up, that's fine, but you have to get it out of the purview of the county paying for it, because I believe those other legal considerations come into play. If that's the case, now IT's involved because somehow we've got to harvest that information. Is that,
I also think IT's involved because there's probably a lot of things that do get funded that don't get funded. So if there's extra money, we have to take all of that in the totality of the circumstances.
Yeah, we still have a full-time employee request that has not been fulfilled. It was in the 2016 budget that we've been told to put on hold, which is also economic development. facilities is the same way. So if this project is put in here, the bathtub is still overflowing.
We'll bring it back next week. We'll have a further discussion with Commissioner Beach. And we'll all think about it over the next week as far as what the right way we should base them back next week. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Well, it's something for the Economic Development Council. And this is back on the agenda, and Mark had had some questions with regards to the contract. So we agreed not moving it forward until Mark had his questions answered. Again, today's a tough day because Commissioner Peach isn't here, so I don't expect that the board will make a formal decision today. We're really trying to make sure all three commissioners are in place when major decisions are made. But this work session is basically, it's a request of your issues and questions, so I'll put it over to you, I guess.
Great. Thank you for coming back. Thank you both for meeting with me last week. As you know, I'm interested in continuing to support the EDC, and I, however, want to do that in a way that that helps county taxpayers understand what they're getting for that investment. And so what I tried to do last week was take a look at your strategic plan, your 2014 to 2018 strategic plan, and I just looked specifically at your objectives and goals and outcomes that are contained in your strategic plan, and then focused on the two program areas which you've identified as the most important program areas, and for right now suggested some metrics or some areas of activity that can be measured in order to help us understand what's being accomplished. And I tried to limit it to, or at least limit my suggestion as to what you have told us is important and what you've told us you're trying to focus on and accomplish on. I'm not interested in trying to ask for or require reporting that is a waste of time, that is not germane to the work that you say that is important for you to do. I'm not interested in trying to tell you how to accomplish the work that's important. But what I would like to do, and I don't know how my fellow commissioners will feel about this, and I'm very sorry Commissioner Peach isn't able to be here today since he's not feeling well, because I know that he would have a lot to add to this discussion. But what I would like to do is I would like to, or I'm in favor of renewing the EDC's contract. However, I would like to develop a contract, and I would like to ask that you report back to us on your progress. I'm not looking to put targets in there. I'm not looking to put in numbers that I expect to be met. I'm just interested in knowing that you're focused on tracking tracking your work, and that you're able to report it accurately. And so what I would love any feedback that you have, and then I really just hope that we can talk a little bit about whether my fellow commissioners feel that we're moving in the right direction or not. And the way that I have been thinking about this just over the last few days is typically the money that or at least last year, the money that the county allocated to the EDC was paid in monthly installments, in essence. Is that correct? Maybe what we can do is, if we can agree upon the specific measures that you would be tracking and reporting back, maybe we can agree to sign a contract for the amount that has been requested with a stipulation that perhaps in September, if that's a mutually agreed upon time, that you could come back and provide us with an update on these objectives, because I realize your focus the last couple of years, or at least the last year and a half, has not been on measuring your outcomes. It's been on putting your organizational structure together and all of the other things that you've been doing. So this is somewhat of a change of direction in some regards, and I understand that. So, but I would like to, in essence, get a progress report, maybe about September, and hear from you how you're doing compared to what you hope to be doing, and then we can move on from there. So I'll just be quiet for right now.
Do you have some thoughts or?
Yeah, no, I do. Specifically, and this is pulled from the EDC's strategic direction 2014 to 2018. The stated strategic objectives are 4. No net loss of private sector jobs between the 2010 and 2020 census. Employment in the ages of 25 to 60 years old. We want to see 95% of employable citizens are either employed or looking for employment, which would be an increase from 93%, which is apparently where we were at in 2010. The 4th strategic objectives is median wages of the consumer price index plus 4%. Median wages of jobs in the county, I assume that refers to. And then median household income of consumer price index plus 4%. So I would like an update on each of those objectives specifically. And as time goes on, when you can illustrate trends in that data, that's more helpful. So second, your stated goals and outcomes from your strategic plan. Again, there are 4. Support 15 companies to significantly expand or locate in Clallam County. Number 2, induce $75 to $100 million of investment in new facilities. Number 3, create over 500 new direct jobs. Number 4, ensure an ever-building pipeline of new projects. Again, I would like an update on those, on each of those 4 areas specifically. How are we doing? What are you doing? How are we doing? Next, you've identified business retention and expansion and business attraction and marketing as your 2 most important program areas. Based on our conversation last Thursday and on metrics that are suggested by the International Economic Development Corporation, so an organization that I guess you could say understands the types of metrics that are important for EDCs to track. I've highlighted a few in each of those areas. If any of these don't sound reasonable or fair, or there are other metrics that you think are more important, then let's talk about them. But in the business attraction and marketing arena, again, these are the 2 program areas that you've told me are the most important to you. Some metrics that you could report on would be the number of businesses attracted to the county, the number of jobs attracted to the county, number and value of new development projects facilitated by the EDC, new investment facilitated by the EDC, active prospects that are in the pipeline, tax incentives that you've advertised to companies that were then awarded, target marketing campaigns that you've undertaken, which, since we're early in the process for the work that you're doing, something like that is important to measure, even though it may not have resulted in anything yet. So for any or all of those, depending on your input, I'd love a brief description of how you're doing. What have you accomplished in each of those areas? For business retention and expansion, the metrics I've called out would be the number of businesses expanded due to assistance from the EDC, the number of businesses retained due to your efforts, number of types of jobs retained, number of businesses you've assisted with tax incentives or access to financing or the other things that you already track. So finally, as the organization that has the most regional outlook with regard to economic development, personally, I'm interested in knowing, and again, I don't know if my fellow commissioners are interested in this as well, this is me speaking. I'm interested in knowing what type of coordination you're engaging in with other economic development partners in the county, how you are working with permitting agencies to help facilitate those issues. That's something that I heard at your annual dinner has been an issue at least sometimes. So I'd love to know how you're working to overcome some of those obstacles when possible. And then finally, are you making progress on working with other economic development entities or partners to develop some regional proposals? And for those three areas, I would just love some examples of what you're doing. And again, I have a personal belief that it's important to make a commitment to tracking outcomes like this because it informs the work that you're doing and ensures that you are a learning organization. However, my motivation for encouraging us to think about this is because this is what helps us communicate with the taxpayers what they're getting for their investment. And I think that is a vital element of accountability and transparency for all of us. And particularly since your long-term funding model is going to ideally depend on, and correct me if I'm wrong, but approximately 40% of your budget over the long term you'd like to see from governmental entities. I would just like to suggest that I know that as an elected official, it will be much easier for me to actively participate as one of those public funding entities if you are committed to understanding the work that you're doing, committed to being accountable for it, and committed to communicating that to the public. And I imagine that the other public agencies and entities that have elected officials who need to make these funding decisions, that they'll be a lot more excited to be positive participants if you are proactively saying, hey, we care about what we're doing, we're measuring it, we want to understand the impact, and by the way, here's what it is, you're getting a great value for your investment. So that's the sort of metrics that I would like to see included in a contract.
Do you guys have any thoughts?
I have a few answers. Top line and bottom line, actually, are that we agree with you, and we're happy to do that, okay? But I would like to add a few other things.
Great.
We haven't been spending the last year and a half getting things together. We have spent the last year and a half working very hard. And we have done a lot of business retention work and recruitment work that you're well aware of now.
Yes.
And you haven't said a word to me about your satisfaction with that, when I can tell you our other public partners and our private sector partners have praised it to the skies. So does that mean anything? Is a question I have to you.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it does. I was pleased to read about the specific specific successes that you've had, and I think that one of the things that I'm hoping is that rather than reporting those successes to your board, that that those successes can be reported and should be reported more broadly.
They haven't. They haven't.
Okay.
But you directed us to this, which I found very useful.
Yes.
I can't say I've read the whole thing yet. But we did study Yates County, New York. And Yates County is the smaller EDC that's won quite a few awards. Yates County has a population of 25,000. It's about 1/7 the size of Clallam County and has an EDC staff of 3. I actually know the county modestly because I used to live in the county next door, Tompkins County. And so I know the people there and what's happening. It's a town that has shrunk in size from roughly from 1890 to 1990 in a slope like this. What's happened in Yates, and it's a good example, I'm glad you brought it up, is that as the cost of living in New York City and then the outlying areas of New York City have expanded, it's so hard to set up a business and afford the cost of living that small businesses have had to go further upstate New York. Yates is about a 4-hour drive from New York City, from perspective. And so they have got what appears to me to be a very good 3-person team. And what they're spending their time doing are attracting small, what I'll call small tech businesses of 1, 2, or 3 people. And that has been their focus, primarily. They don't seem to have much large industry in the sense that we have some large industry here in Clallam County. And they don't seem to have the resources we do in Clallam County to attract large businesses. It's not a bad example, but the most we got out of it was by studying what they felt were the ways of measuring success. And they have, if you read it, I think, did you remember the SMART system that they came up with? That the metrics needed to be specific, that they needed to be, excuse me, I want to get the glasses on, make sure I have this right. I have it memorized. They needed to be measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And I agree with that. I think we can get this together in the way you suggest, the time frame you suggest. So I appreciate it. And as you know from our discussion, this is where the world of profit has clashed with the world of nonprofit. It just has to take a little learning curve. And I think we'll get there okay. And my other concern with reporting metrics in the way they're asked for is because you might remember Ron Allen saying, we're all paddling the same canoe.
Right.
And so what we do is just part of the equation. And so it's very hard to report, but that we did something to create, that we created a business, or we retained the business. We might have helped in retaining a business. We might have helped in bringing in business. But it takes many parties in this community to make those things happen. We can bring somebody at a First Federal and have taught them how to apply for a loan that we hope First Federal will make. But we can't control whether First Federal will make that loan.
Absolutely.
And that's a good example of what we do all the time. And we are helping business after business after business, and we work very hard at it, and we do it every single day. So I just want you to have a feel it's a good investment, and we'll develop these metrics, and perhaps we can meet a time or two just to go over what we've come up with and answer your question to try to make things logical and reasonable and measurable the way you would like to see them.
The technical question since this funding request would come from the Opportunity Fund, and typically the EDC vets Opportunity Fund requests, what would an alternate process be?
Well, any number of things. The potential for conflict that I believe you're talking about, in my mind, could be made simply because all the EDC actually does is it doesn't process all requests, it only processes project requests. This is a request of funding of personnel for an ADO as specifically provided under statute, simply in the board's perusal. For instance, right now, we don't ask the Opportunity Fund Advisory Board nor the EDC for permission to take the $10,000 a year that we do to give to the general fund, nor that, for our processing and our expense, nor the $30,000 a year, which only $10,000 also comes out of the Opportunity Fund, that goes towards the EDC for their support of the project. So we're only asking them to weigh in on support. So I'm not sure there is a real conflict in the question. But last year, the board did decide to take it out of the Opportunity Fund in funding the first $150,000 and just do it as a general fund item simply for the board's decision. And it could be done that way again. But we did, during the budget process, we did put it in as an ADO payment in the Opportunity Fund. That's how it's currently budgeted. It can be funded or not, any way the board wants to. It's just that's where it is in the budget right now. It would require budget modifications or not if we didn't do anything. We just wouldn't do it.
Commissioner Chapman, are you open to or do you think it's a good idea to have a contract with the EDC?
I think you should be given a lot of credit for the hard work you've put into this. It was a step that was missing last year and caused a lot of consternation in the public. So I applaud the steps you've taken the lead on it. I do want to wait and hear what Commissioner Peach has to say, but it's a vastly different process than what we had last year. I appreciate it. Appreciate Bill's willingness. Doug, you have something to say?
Yeah, and that's a conclusion to what happened. I mean, what's been going on. But yes, it is different than it was last year. And it's different because we're doing things differently than we've been doing. Now, something I really want to make a point of is that we participate in what I refer to as competition cooperation, because we're dealing with businesses every day. And I'm using we as the EDC here now. I do have another job that's not included in what I'm talking about right now. But the idea is that with a business, there are some things that the EDC can talk about with a business that no one else can talk about. And because of that, it becomes private.
Sure.
It becomes, there's a trust that's developed there. So while I agree with your whole list here, I think it's a great idea. I think these things are good. We want to know these things, but we have to be careful about how we do report on those things so that we don't interfere with the competition that's in the marketplace. You know, it's something that we have to treat generally.
I do understand that. I would not request or attempt to request or ask you to report on any sort of proprietary information.
And excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but sometimes we can't even report a name.
No, I understand.
Okay.
Especially not a name.
Yeah.
You know, I think that what I'm getting at here is not information about specific companies or specific contacts or specific visits. I want to know what you're learning as a result of those. You know, whether the work that you envisioned at the beginning of 2014 as the work that you ought to be doing, you know, once you get to most of the way through 2016, you know, how do you feel? Are you moving in the right direction? Was your initial direction maybe, have you learned that maybe your initial direction wasn't quite right compared to, where you need to go now? Are you, wildly successful and ready to take on something different? That's what I'm trying to get at, and what I would hope to do if we're able to look at doing a contract. Maybe, since Commissioner Peach isn't here, we're going to keep talking about this a little more. Maybe you can take the metrics that I've suggested, coming from your plan, and come back to us with an idea of this is how we think we can accomplish this reporting in a way that is not going to be unduly onerous on you as an organization, that's not going to taint or potentially taint any of the business that's in the pipeline. Now, I don't know how you can report it, but I know that other EDCs find ways to do it that are appropriate for them, and I'm hoping that you can use that tool and others to help us understand what are the right metrics for you, and that you are committed to following those and reporting on them. That's right.
That's
and
exactly right.
So that we understand what, so that we can tell anyone who asks, here's what we're getting for that investment. And again, as someone who, I wouldn't have, I have read that. I found it last week. I read the whole damn thing, and I care about this, and I want you guys to be successful. And so, but to me, that would be a fine next step would be for you to come back and say, here, we understand what you're getting at. Here's how we think we can do that, and then we can put the contract together and move forward.
If you don't mind, if we could, I'd like to go to your first suggestion earlier, and that is, I think this is something we need a lot of time on, not something for the next meeting. We also have a full plate of our own that's dealing with companies in the county. I would like to come back to you in September, as you suggested, and quicker, if we feel comfortable doing so. And as I said, offer to sit down with you occasionally to look at, in private, and just to look at, does this feel like what you want? Have that kind of conversation. Is that meeting it? But we'd like to wait until September and have something that's very, very good.
You're not meaning a report on these right now, you're meaning come
Right.
back with a definition or explanation
That's right.
on how we will report these to you in September.
That's right. I would like to come up with a contract in the short term so that we can move forward that says, in part, in return for $150,000 from
We're
the
gonna go back and tell
opportunity
you
fund.
X, Y, Z.
Right, that in September, you'll come back and report on X, Y, and Z. And then, right, then you'll come back and
You're
report on
basically
this.
looking for the goals and objectives to input into the new contract for 2016. We will come back and report on those in September, stating, okay, this is where we're at today, this is how far we've come against these measurables that are built into our contract.
Yes.
So you want us to kind of say how we're going to report on these
Yeah,
by the next meeting?
Yes, I'd like you, right, and if you have any, if you look at this, at all of these that I put out there today, and you say, well, in business attraction and marketing, there are one or two of those that just make no sense to you, or that would be impossible to put together, or you think, well, boy, Mark, you really kind of missed the mark on that, and what you should be asking us to track is this, whatever. Let me know what those things are, but I would like to get those in the contract so that you are required to report back on them. And moving forward, into future years, I can't say how it's going to look, but for this year, I would love to have those, the basic, the metrics that you will report on specified. If September seems like a reasonable time frame to get a bunch of work done between now and then you can come back. And since reporting like this is different than the way you've worked with the Board of Commissioners previously, this September provides sort of a mid-year opportunity for us to see how it's going and for you to see how, what it actually means to report on those sorts of things. And then we'll be able to continue to move forward with a well-informed understanding of where we're at.
Three things that I like about this. One is, I think it's important that things be measurable. I don't have any arguments with what I see. How those apply, I don't know yet. Secondly, this is what I'm considering to be the first real good effort at coming up with a contract that will be, I hate to say it this way, but one size fits all. We've always been in a situation where we had to have a contract with the city and then a contract with the court, and they wanted different deliverables, and they wanted different deliverables. So I would like for us to make sure that in this process, we're considering those things, which I see here as something that should be an interest to all of those organizations as opposed to pet projects.
Well, I would be happy to volunteer my assistance in helping to coordinate with other cities and the port and whomever else. If you would like that assistance to come up with some common, whether it's this is our starting point or something else, some common.
I would just like us to be thinking about it.
Yeah,
that when we're going through the process, we're saying, this is something we would like to have as a cumulative benefit.
That's right, and I think that just as a general statement, if you, the EDC as an organization, comes in front of our board or any other board, and your starting point is a commitment to understanding what you're doing, to explaining it, to measuring the impact, to helping people understand why it's important. That doesn't mean that you have to talk about everything that you do, but I think you're going to find that other boards of commissioners and city council people and whoever the elected official is going to be much more open to listening to you make your case if that commitment to accountability is there right up front. And I want that to be coming from you as an organization, because when I, as an elected official, look at that, I say, well, they are committed to helping the public understand what their investment is resulting in, and that makes it a lot easier for me to, not only to be supportive of it, but to help other people understand why it's important. So for next step, then, would you be willing to come back to the Board of Commissioners, review the list of metrics that I've suggested, come back with your take on that, whether that sounds great or not, whatever feedback you have. Hopefully Commissioner Beach can be here, and then we can move forward with the...
Probably can't be next week because the clerk has to have any documents for a work session by Wednesday, I doubt if you're going to get done. So why don't you work on it when you're done, and you can contact our clerk when you're ready to schedule it for a work session. It might take you longer than Wednesday. You might have learned by your board too.
I'll give you give you a sample of our in-house contract that we had drafted for this one. It seems to me that under everything Commissioner Ozias is talking about would be contained in the scope of work portion of that. And it looks like a pretty easy
I
tweak.
think you need to build in quarterly meetings with the board of commissioners
Yeah.
instead of just a date. I would just build it into the DNR meeting. Many organizations meet with the board quarterly, and I think that that's a protection and that's a good partnership model. And so that, I would throw that out, that we build in a quarterly meeting. What Bill, you could do is bring a staff person and maybe a new board member each time too, just so that the various board members have a chance to meet with the board. Let's be honest, if it wasn't for county funding, I doubt if your organization would exist much longer. We're the only, so many public agencies aren't even funding you anymore, from what I understand. The city's backed off. Other, I think schools, they're not. I mean, without our funding, I don't think you'd have a chance to have an EDC. So, we're the ones that are front and center of the public. Public are the ones asking us, why are we funding you? We have to have a partnership and we have to have it open and transparent so the public knows what it is we're doing. And I think that's what Mark has brought to the table to start that process. That's a little different, but it is your without our funding. It would just be difficult to exist in any kind of capacity.
It's not just different, it's good.
No, I agree.
Okay.
No, he's done a good job.
Come a long way, I think so.
So we'll wait to hear back from you guys when you're kind of ready to
Sure.
bring it back
Yep.
in some sort of contract form. And I think right now it's still in we'll talk to Bill next week, or we'll have to figure out how the budget, whether we want to take it out of opportunity fund or move it over to the general fund. If we move it over to the general fund, it would require a budget emergency, public hearing. Before I took more money out of the general fund, for me personally, I want to go to the leadership team. It'd be a really large chunk of money to come out of our general fund reserve. So I don't know what the right way to go is. We'll think about that. I could go either direction. I personally like the idea of going to a public hearing again. I kind of like the idea of talking to our leadership team and whether we should fund this organization. But I realize that all takes time. And I don't know what your thoughts are. And we'll find out what bills are too down the road.
Well, I don't have any thoughts right now as to where the funding should come from, whether it's opportunity fund or general fund. I'm very cognizant of the commitment that this board made to your organization last year. You've been building plans, building staff based on that commitment, and I very much appreciate that. And so, which is why I'm trying to find a way that we can keep moving forward based on that commitment, but layering in what we're talking about here. So, as to where the funding comes from, I'm not sure. I do think I don't see why it would not be appropriate to have to hold a public hearing to discuss it.
Well, the contract alone would be something discussed with you before the public.
Well,
So, I don't know, we'll have to talk about where the funding comes from.
And maybe as we're tasking you to come back to us, having thought through, are these the right metrics and how are we actually going to report on those? Our homework will be looking at the budget and figuring out how we're going to fund it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being so willing to look at things differently. I appreciate it.
The next two items, I think we'll just have to reschedule them. One was an item brought forward by Bill, so unless you want to talk about it, I think we're well past our allotted time anyway. I think it can wait. Doesn't look like there's anything time sensitive, is there, Jim?
Nope.
So we'll wait till Bill can come back and lead that discussion. And with regards to moving forward, I think we have to obviously have Bill to move forward on the process, performance, job description, and contract review for the administrator. So we'll reschedule those two items and the Commissioner Peach can join us. By my agenda, future agenda items that we need to put on, and Tricia, you're listening, would be discussion with regards to District Report 1 and 2 and the consolidation process allowed by state law. As stated, and the framework for the discussion is the email we received from Judge John Doherty. So if you don't have a copy of that, Jim can get you. So that's the framework for the discussion, and then Jim is going to reach out to the judges before we schedule that meeting.
Yes.
Obviously, we basically will have to bring back items 13, 14, 15, and 16 because we didn't reach any consensus on how to move forward. Those some general ideas, and we need to have Commissioner Peach's input. So I think we'll just have to see how the next 2 weeks go. We'll try to squeeze those in.
Okay.
Update of emergency management briefings will be scheduled for next week. Olympic area on agency on aging wanted to have an orientation with 2 board members, so I said let's just schedule it for a work session so the public can know what that organization is about. The climate change briefing presented by the North Olympic Development Council scheduled now for February 22nd at 11 a.m. The Opportunity Fund Board recommendation regarding the SARC is still pending based on last week's discussion until mid to late March. And Commissioner Peach is working with roads on the Striped Peak Road Improvement District, so we'll bring that forward when he's got his issues. And we haven't scheduled time yet for the Charter Review Commission recommendations. We still have to get date time for that. So adding after today, the District Court 1 and 2, Judge John Doherty's request, and next week, and then the items in the next week or 2 items 13, 14, 15, and 16 for further discussion and direction of staff.
Great.
Anything else?